Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze is now on hold, since we're caught up with the author. Along with that, the series What If Fishing System and Food Wars World will be going on hold soon, since we're nearly caught up with the author there as well. So now, I need your help picking the next two projects for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if Transmigrated and taking over Ichigo's body? What if martial artist Reborn is Kenichi Shirahama? Please vote in the poll and let me know which stories you'd like to see next. I'll take the top two picks and start working on those series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 371, Kakashi's Impression. Third person POV. Konoha, 43. Kakashi was left speechless as soon as he arrived at the Namikaze house in the afternoon. He was greeted by a Uchiha woman strolling with two baby strollers near the gate, while the sounds of fighting came from behind the house. She asked him to come in after allowing him to pass through the barriers surrounding the property, which, it should be said, were not few. He would have been trapped there if he had not seen Makoto Uchiha, and he believed that not even his father could get through them if he wanted to force his way in. Not with few ninjutsu masters at the same level that the first Hokage's wife had in her prime living in that place. Then he entered and stopped in front of the training field as he went around the residence toward Minato's house. Since that day the academy would not be full-time, he knew that Minato would be training some students, according to his father, but he did not expect to find such a curious scene. There were his former classmates, all scattered across the field. Some with irregular breathing, but returning to practice hand seals, while others continued training constantly with a smile on their faces, even drenched in sweat. In one corner of the training field was the boy known as Yamato, whom he had already heard about. He was famous and known in the village for possessing the legendary Mokuton and also for being protected by the Senju clan. He had first been trained by Tsunade Senju and, after the Namikaze's return to the village, Tsunade's daughter, Suna, had taken over his training. Kakashi still did not fully understand the situation, but his father certainly did. After all, information of that importance could not have been ignored by the village. And there was the young adult woman in question, performing several hand seals while the boy Yamato watched. When she finished the jutsu, entire roots began to sprout from the ground. Then, 30 trees began to rise one after another, as if it were something simple. She can also use Mokuton, Kakashi murmured, stunned. As he had thought before, clearly the village must already know this. But for someone like him, who had no idea, it was impossible not to be shocked at seeing one of Minato Namikaze's wives creating trees in that way. The boy, perhaps a little younger than him, began trying to imitate her. He struggled to create a single tree, while she had already created dozens without any effort, rebuilding a part of the training field that they themselves had destroyed on some occasion, as Kakashi could tell. After some time, he managed to reproduce one of them. Good, that's great. Considering that we had to start over this morning, this is your 18th tree today, Suna said, satisfied with the boy's performance. He nodded and bowed to Minato's wife, as a student would to his sensei. Thank you for the teachings, sensei. Nearby, Obito was in a corner spitting flames, which surprised Kakashi a little. He was launching a complete D-rank jutsu, something Kakashi thought Obito would not be capable of doing. Not before becoming a genin or chunin. To him, Obito was quite lacking in talent and could not execute any jutsu beyond the three basic ones, and even then only in a mediocre way. Rin, his former teammate, was also there. She was launching water against a tree, almost completing the jutsu, falling just a little below the level of Obito's flames. Kushina, as Kakashi had recognized, was beside Rin, giving a few tips before turning her attention to three girls their same age, all with red hair, clearly from the Uzumaki clan. They were trying to force something to emerge from their backs. Small golden threads began to appear, taking the shape of chains, though still barely visible, emerging only as extensions of chakra. They seemed to be training the signature technique of the Uzumaki clan. On the other side of the field was Minato himself, shirtless, watching the boy who kept shouting that he was his rival. Guy ran toward Minato to attack him with taijutsu and disappeared the next instant. Might Guy fought against Minato in an intense exchange of punches. He was incredibly fast, using techniques that even made Kakashi choke as he watched. Guy can do that. Kakashi could not help but be surprised as he saw him use all his speed to try to advance against Minato. The two disappeared and reappeared to the point that Kakashi could barely follow them with his eyes, although Minato did not seem to make any effort against Guy's attacks, without him using any weights given the speed he was displaying. Kakashi was surprised. After all, he and Guy were always training together. His father had already spoken about the Might family. Minato had also trained with Dway in taijutsu and helped develop the Eight Gates technique, for which Guy was known today in the Hidden Leaf Village as one of the greatest taijutsu specialists. Or rather, one of the two greatest, since Minato was also recognized for being extremely powerful in this combat style since childhood. His techniques, including the unique ability to fly through the skies, were famous throughout the entire ninja world. He had demonstrated this extensively during the Second Ninja War, fighting Inoki, one of the few who could fly, in addition to carrying out impossible infiltrations, appearing beyond any sentinel, crossing borders, and emerging in the middle of enemy camps, as he had done when attacking the forces of the Land of Stone coming directly from the sky. Later, it also became known that Dway could perform this technique as well, which he learned only through the scroll Minato gave him, demonstrating his unique talent in taijutsu. But there was Minato, the only man who could surpass his father, as Kakashi believed at that time, and also the only one who had stood by Hatake when no one else in the village did. And now he was training at high speed with his self-declared rival in a taijutsu battle that Kakashi was not sure he could win, even using his own jutsus. How did he become so strong? It's only been a few weeks since I last saw him, Kakashi thought, looking at Minato. Could what he had done to train Guy really be working that well? Minato continued fighting Guy for several minutes, until Minato dodged one of the boy's blows and precisely struck the back of Guy's neck. Guy fell unconscious at that very instant, making Kakashi's eyes widen behind his mask at how easily Minato had taken him down. Minato did not let him hit the ground. He caught him before the fall and placed him over his shoulder, walking back toward Kakashi with a calm smile. There were 7 children training on the field, all from Kakashi's generation. He did not exactly understand why Rin and Obito were there, since, in his view, they did not have the talent the others possessed. Even Yamato was already beginning to release his Mokuton at a level far beyond what a child should normally have in terms of chakra within him. As for the 3 Uzumaki girls, the Uzumaki clan had probably sent their best children to train with Kushina, for obvious reasons. Near Kakashi was Hanabi, whom he had heard about as one of those responsible for the explosion in recent days. She was observing. Makoto Uchiha, who had greeted Kakashi, went to watch the training as well, standing beside her sister-in-law from the Hyuga clan, with 2 baby strollers. "Hello, Kakashi," Minato approached, still holding Guy over his shoulder. "Hello," Kakashi murmured, a little cautious. "I saw that you arrived in the village last night. It's good that your father instructed you to come here, otherwise I would have called you myself," Minato said, making Kakashi frown. This guy certainly knew where he was and even the time he had arrived in the village itself. And Kakashi could swear he had not felt anyone watching him. As a high-ranking chunin, he would notice even a sensor ninja focused on him, unless they were extremely skilled. But that man made everything seem simple, and worse, he could not sense absolutely anything. So this is the level of someone at the top, Kakashi thought, clenching his fist. A burning desire for power rose in his heart. Minato noticed this and opened an even wider smile. "You seem determined. That's good. You will come all 3 days of the week to train with us in the afternoon, while I am not teaching at the academy in the afternoon. In 2 weeks, the academy will graduate new classes and you will be chosen for a team. You can already get ahead on some things here, since your team will be among these children," Minato explained. Kakashi looked at the 3 Uzumaki girls. They would clearly be on their own team, probably under Kushina's leadership. If he could form a team with Guy, for whom he already had respect, and Yamato, whose Mokutan seemed promising, Kakashi would not complain. He wanted to be on a capable team, one that could rely on its companions. Minato followed his gaze toward Guy and Yamato and almost laughed, but restrained himself, keeping only a small smile. They are the best here, without a doubt. But they will not be the ones I want for you. Minato thought. Will you be my sensei? Kakashi asked. It was an obvious question, since Minato was already training them. Yes, Minato shrugged. You already know about the agreement I have with your father. Even before he came to ask me for that, I already knew that we were destined to be student and teacher. Besides, why do you think I handed over a high-level technique like the Chidori so easily to you back then? Kakashi was surprised and fell silent, but he understood. The Chidori was already a jutsu from the village's scroll, with Minato having traded for the Hiraishin plus the Rasengan, an exchange he considered fair. Besides, Kakashi was the only one who could use that jutsu, and Kushina and Jiraiya Sakumo could use the Rasengan, all apart from its own creator, of course. Minato then took the unconscious Guy off his shoulder and gave a light tap to his forehead. The boy blinked quickly and woke up, looking around in confusion, until Minato set him on the ground. Ah, it seems I lost, Guy said, smiling sheepishly. Then he looked at Kakashi and pointed at him. Kakashi, my eternal rival. Are you here to challenge me? Know that I am overflowing with youth and even more skills. Not yet, Guy, Minato interrupted. First, let's train your resistance to pressure. Guy's eyes widened. All the children who were training stopped and looked at Minato without realizing it, even without noticing him or Kakashi talking. Those words seemed like a warning of what was to come. Kakashi was also stunned, while the others suddenly seemed tense. Without any warning, Minato released an explosion of Conqueror's haki in all directions. A wind with yellow lightning that distorted the space around them simply burst outward. The impact of the pressure fell upon Kakashi and everyone else at the same time, like an invisible force crushing the air around them. Kakashi did not know it, but Minato did that constantly. It was training to force the children to deal with spiritual pressure, something similar to the killing intent any enemy could release against them, in addition to getting them used to the possible pressure of enemies on the battlefield. Instead of merely intimidating, Minato used haki, which was far more powerful, training their minds to withstand that kind of oppression. Immediately, Rin and Obito, who were already on alert, dropped to their knees under the force of the impact. Yamato resisted for a few seconds, but soon he too was pressed against the ground. The three Uzumaki girls, who had stood up immediately, began to give in one by one. Only one of them managed to remain standing for a few moments, gritting her teeth with effort. Guy was close to Minato. His knees trembled, but he remained firm, teeth clenched and groaning with the effort. Kakashi, not far from there, had been caught off guard. He saw Minato as if he were a mountain before him, unleashing an enormous pressure that increased with each passing second, as if the very weight of that mountain wanted to crush him. Or like a throne. As if Minato were some kind of king, and his knees weakened before a true conqueror. He did not know exactly what that was, but it was extremely powerful. He had never heard of anything similar. There were rumors, even records in the bingo book, that Minato could use a type of pressure similar to killing intent, capable of making anyone around him faint. Kakashi trembled, his knees wanting to give in, but he pushed himself as much as possible. He was not a nearly 10-year-old Chunin for nothing. The last Uzumaki finally fell to her knees. Her companions were already pressed to the ground along with the other two. Only Kakashi and Guy still remained kneeling, struggling not to collapse completely. Kakashi began to look around. The environment seemed different. Yellow lightning began to spread across the field. It did not hurt anyone, but it created a strange effect within that oppressive energy pressing down on them all. Suna and Kushina, who were in the middle of the training field, watched the scene without seeming affected. Minato carefully controlled the pressure. Although they were within the area, he was not forcing them to their limit. The only ones not being pressured were the two children in the strollers. Minato had deliberately excluded them from the wave of haki. Pressure was something he also trained with his wives. He wanted to test them and make them get used to the Conqueror's haki whenever possible. When released on another continent at full strength, it could sweep across entire regions with furious waves of haki capable of knocking down a ninja army. With the current level Minato possessed, they could withstand it, but it was still good training. Compared to that, the pressure Minato was releasing now was nothing. Even so, for Kakashi, it was crushing. Finally, his knees gave out. He fell to the ground, stunned. He felt small. Powerless. How was it possible for someone to make him kneel simply by releasing something similar to killing intent, but at a level he had never imagined could exist? How could someone be so powerful that without moving a finger he could still make a proud ninja like him, who prided himself on being the student who graduated the fastest in Konoha's history at the academy and becoming a chunin faster than Minato, seem insignificant? The difference was gigantic. That was the true peak. Guy held on as long as he could, but finally he also fell. Minato then gradually stopped releasing the Conqueror's haki, until he began to laugh. Very good. I release this pressure occasionally during training so that all the children begin to get used to it. This pressure depends greatly on your willpower. As you can see, even Guy has more determination than you, Kakashi. But the point is not who has more of it. It's how long you can endure. And I must say that I did not release even 10% of my real pressure. So this is something you will train constantly, to get used to it before going to a real battlefield, Minato explained. Kakashi remained there, speechless. Guy began to laugh triumphantly, pointing at Kakashi. I won. I won in a battle between rivals, he declared, even though nothing had been agreed upon. But Kakashi's mind was elsewhere. He completely ignored Guy. His gaze remained fixed on his future teacher. What kind of training awaited him from now on? He had met Minato when he was not even 5 years old for the first time, known throughout the village as the greatest genius ever created in Konoha. Kakashi still remembered very clearly the phrase that had been said that one day, he would surpass him. And he had surpassed him in some requirements, but in terms of real strength, Kakashi was not even close to the potential of the man in front of him. He had to acknowledge that. Chapter 372, Will They Act? Third-person POV. Konoha, 43. In the Hokage's office were Minato Namikaze, Tsukumo Hatake, Mazu Uchiha, Shiran Nara, Masaki Uzumaki, being the current advisors/elders of the village or alliance of Konohagakure and Uzushigakure. They were discussing, on that day, something quite concerning not only for the village, but also for the ninja world itself. Each of them had received a copy of Konoha's intelligence report, with Jiraiya himself and other teams investigating the activities outside the Land of Fire, entering and leaving the village over the last 4 weeks. Sensei left again because of this, Minato couldn't help but think, since it had been 3 days since Jiraiya had gone to his house to inform him that he would be leaving for the Land of Stone. After all, the movements of the ninja world were quite strange, as if everyone were reacting cautiously to Konoha's new power, keeping their movements in the shadows it seemed. So all the great nations decided to make a move, Masaki said after reading the report. Well, that is to be expected. But the question is, what will result from this meeting? After all, not even the 4 great nations would have the power to face us, Minato replied calmly. But we also cannot underestimate the ambition of those old men. We had those same old men in the village claiming to be protectors, until we uncovered their crimes and ambitions, Mazu spoke. I don't know what they will discuss at this meeting, but clearly we need to keep an eye on them. I want to send an elite squad, a team to spy on this meeting in secret, Tsukumo said, while everyone agreed for obvious reasons. Even though the nations no longer represented a direct challenge to Konoha, it was still necessary to monitor their movements. That was how the ninja world worked and their enemies could surprise them. About that, I believe my wife Hanabi and I can carry out this mission, Minato said to everyone. The 2 of them would certainly be perfect for a mission of this caliber, which might even be above S rank, without any enemy realizing they were being spied on, and the problem wasn't even the elite ninjas of each village, but rather those beings that hide beneath the earth. If anyone was capable of spying without alerting the white Zetsus, it was certainly those 2. If you believe you can do it, then I see no reason to stop you, Tsukumo said. Minato and Hanabi had been trained by Jiraiya, during the Second Ninja War, in the art of infiltration and espionage. But it was their current abilities that would make the difference. Minato would use haki, and Hanabi would use her special eyes, remaining in a safe position to know everything that happened, even with barriers and every type of protection that the nations might raise. Very well. They will gather in at least 1 week, already departing from their villages. You will have full authority over your mission, Tsukumo declared. He had complete confidence that Minato would know how to act. He was already planning at that very moment, and there was no reason to interfere, leaving full autonomy to him. Minato nodded. Then, Mazu raised her hand. The other thing I would like to announce to everyone. I want to announce my retirement, she said, as everyone turned their gaze toward her. So you're finally going to retire? And who will take your place? Will it be? Shiran asked. He certainly had doubts. After all, within the Uchiha clan, there was Fugaku training to become the next leader, but he was not the most powerful of his generation either. After all, there was. Minato noticed the looks turning toward him and shook his head. Makoto would not assume any authority outside the Namikaze clan that was not related to her ninja career. Even though many Uchiha elders had approached him and his wife to make all kinds of proposals since Makoto took over the leadership of the clan after her father, Minato had refused all meetings and offers made directly to him. Makoto belonged by his side, as his wife and one of the matriarchs of the Namikaze clan. Her loyalty is with her family. It will be Fugaku, as many expect, Mazu said, pausing. It's obvious that I will still continue as an advisor and become an elder of the clan. Fugaku will attend some meetings with me until he definitively assumes the Uchiha clan's seat among you. The others nodded. Minato saw Mazu's gaze directed at him, indicating that she wanted to talk. It was obvious that there were still remnants of the intrigues that Minato and Fugaku had created many years ago, due to the breaking of Makoto's engagement, which ended with her becoming Minato's wife. And Mazu and all the elders wanted the Uchiha clan to remain on good terms with the Namikaze clan. So you're going to take on a team after graduation? The Nara patriarch asked Minato, who nodded. Yes. Graduation will be tomorrow, Minato replied. The final test will take place tomorrow, and right after that will be the graduation. I've heard a lot about what you've been doing with the class. I also had the opportunity to see the students' performance in some reports. I must admit that the children's performance has improved greatly since you took over. Perhaps we should change the curriculum a bit, Shiran said openly to everyone. His son had also participated in the program in the elite class, together with Minato and the others. He could clearly see the difference between what had become the class that produced the most geniuses in Konoha's history and the others over the years. None came close to the level of those who had entered that program and made their names for themselves as those beyond the Namikaze family. Yes, obviously placing a jonin to teach the children is quite beneficial. We should also review the curriculum. You know my opinion. The children don't even learn how to properly manipulate chakra, which is a flaw in the village's current education system. And the 3 basic jutsus are not enough to measure whether a child is truly fit to enter a battlefield and become a real ninja fighting against death. Minato said. The village must stop this system designed to limit the geniuses born among us. We are no longer the old elders. We should not be cautious with every powerful ninja who emerges. In fact, we should let the trees sprout as they are meant to, and not try to place ropes and watchers on every promising sapling, Minato added. He hated the philosophy that the third Hokage had created. They could have formed many more powerful ninjas, while Hiruzen spoke about sacrifice for the village and carrying out missions without question. At the same time that Danzo stole talented children and placed them within the root, forcing them to obey and serve him. Becoming killing machines that were meant to obey only his orders. A disgusting system, which had been cut down before it could fully take root in the village. Even so, many things still needed to change, and the academy's curriculum was one of them. So you're going to take on your team? I heard that the women of the Namikaze clan will also be spread across different roles throughout the village, the Uzumaki patriarch said. I was surprised when Makoto said she would return to the ANBU. I even offered her the position of head of Konoha's police, which would have pleased the other elders, but she refused.
Mazu said.
They want to have their own careers.
Kushina will work in the village's sealing and monitoring department, as she has already been doing.
Suna will be with her mother in medical research and at Konoha's hospital, while also training Yamato and taking care of our daughter. As the Uchiha patriarch said, Makoto came to speak with me some time ago. She was planning to take on a team as a tutor, but she reconsidered and showed interest in returning to the ANBU, training to lead her own squad.
As for Hanabi and me, we will be teachers and team leaders for the next generation, Minato explained. I wonder for how long, Minato?
You should take up the village's hat, Tsukumo said this time, giving a small smile.
No one there denied that fact.
All the elders had already decided that Minato would be the next Hokage. However, he continued to declare that he would not assume it, at least, not now.
There is still no new generation of exceptional ninjas ready to sustain Konoha's future. I want to train them. I also want to learn more about the village's structure. I don't want to take the hat before understanding more about Konoha.
My desire is to know everything personally, not only through an office and reports.
No offense, Minato said to Tsukumo, who currently held that position.
Oh, that's cruel, Tsukumo laughed. Minato smiled slightly before continuing. In any case, what I mean is that there are still things I need to do. And perhaps there is a war on the horizon. Even though we are at the peak of the village, even surpassing Konoha's first generation, at the height of the Senju and Uchiha clans, we should still expect a storm forming, and I will be more useful to the village outside the office.
Everyone nodded.
The meeting continued as they discussed other matters, deciding to begin sending ANBU teams directly to the borders.
Even members of the Uzumaki clan would be dispatched to assist with monitoring.
In any case, Minato returned home after an entire day of meetings. The academy had gone into recess so that the students about to graduate would have a day to rest or even train for the final exams.
So, how was the meeting? Minato appeared in the kitchen as Kushina gave him a smile while saying those words, washing the dishes and preparing to start dinner.
Hanabi was also in the kitchen, reading a scroll while seated, pausing to greet her husband.
Upstairs, Makoto and Suna were spending time with the children, playing with them on the upper floor of the house. Tiring, but necessary, Minato replied, sitting at the table beside Hanabi.
His eyes then fell on what she was analyzing. It was the records of 3 Uzumaki girls, the same ones Kushina had been training to awaken the adamantine chains. They had been selected to become Hanabi's students, as she had already been searching for suitable members to take on as a tutor. After some time evaluating candidates from the village, she turned her attention to the Uzumaki clan and asked Minato for the records of several children who were also graduating from the clan's own internal academy, or all received training in Fuinjutsu and combat. Hanabi had finally found a promising trio of 10-year-old girls, quite talented as sensory-type ninjas. That was perfect for her, since besides being a combat ninja, she also possessed evident abilities for espionage and tracking. When they received the proposal, the girls did not think twice before accepting. Hanabi had already demonstrated what she was capable of, both during the time of the island in the sky and in the recent event when she and Minato fought above the land of fire. Makoto also personally asked Kushina to evaluate the girls' abilities and shortcomings. As a direct bloodline Uzumaki, Kushina was the most suitable to identify the strengths and weaknesses of her sister-in-law's future team. That was how the training began. Kushina took charge of the 3 Uzumaki, developing in them the adamantine chains, which would be perfect for combat and restraint. Minato let his wives handle those matters on their own. He only helped when asked. All of them were fully capable of managing what they needed. He was satisfied. Each of them would also be contributing to the village, one in the ANBU, another in the medical corps, another in the sealing sector. He and Hanabi would train the next generation and continue carrying out missions inside and outside the land of fire, just as Makoto would act within the special ANBU force. The night passed peacefully as Makoto and Suna brought the children to the kitchen and began preparing dinner. You seem far too thoughtful, Suna said, not taking her eyes off her husband, who remained silent, with their daughter on his lap while the little one tugged at his clothes. Minato seemed distant. Just thinking about the future. he replied, offering her a faint smile. In truth, his mind was on the land of waterfalls.
The question was, would he finally make a move?
The scenario of the ninja world had changed, and those manipulators behind the curtains could not possibly be pleased with the direction things were taking, especially with the power Konoha had accumulated, which represented a great danger to their plans. The question was why Madara and Black Setsa still had not done anything, remaining silent over the past month. Something told him it was related to the meeting of the Kages. And that was exactly why he would personally observe that meeting.
Chapter 373, Graduation of the New Generation. Third-person POV. Konoha, 43.
The next morning, the day began with a clear sky making way for the sun above Konoha.
Minato appeared at the academy early using Hiraishin, wearing his Jonin uniform.
He advanced toward the academy with no one in sight except for ninjas moving across the rooftops, heading to their missions or even to work within the village. Other than that, there was no one around. Minato had arrived earlier than anyone because he wanted to organize things for his class that would graduate today. He used Hiraishin once more without passing through the academy gate, entering the classroom to prepare today's exams. He didn't want to conduct the traditional tests. He required that his class know more than the 3 basic jutsus, and he stayed there for the next few hours alone inside the academy before everyone else. 2 hours later, Minato had already set up a graduation plan with the students, focusing more on the theoretical exam, while the practical would be easier to manage. 4 classes would graduate that day. His haki spread across the entire grounds, and he already noticed the academy filled with students and teachers. The courtyard was more crowded than usual. Parents had come to bring their children, wishing them good luck. Minato left the classroom and teleported to the teacher's lounge where he would have his first meal, since he had left home as soon as he woke up.
You arrived early today, Minato-sama. One of the Chunins said. Minato nodded, greeting him and the others. Graduation day, and it will be my last day here. So you're going to form a team? Another asked enthusiastically. Exactly. I'll take 2 from my class and 1 from outside. Minato said as he began eating an apple and joining the teacher's conversation about the students, mainly Minato and 3 others who would form the teams today. Incredible, so you'll follow the field ninja system. Merc hasn't arrived yet, but he's going to cry. He saw you as an inspiration day after day teaching classes. I spent a month understanding the village's teaching system. I'm sure I'll use this in the future to improve things. Besides, I need to move into other areas and I'd like to train the new generation. Minato said. So? I heard about your teaching method. You trained your students with elemental jutsus and intend to evaluate them according to that? A teacher asked curiously. All the instructors in the room looked at Minato expectantly. You could say that. I also changed a few more things, but if you're interested, you can look at my report later along with the children's results. Minato replied. I saw one of your reports, but no offense, don't you think that's a bit too much, Minato-sama? Before, it was enough to execute the 3 basic jutsus acceptably. You're going to evaluate fine chakra control, jutsu execution, endurance under pressure, intense combat, and even written tactical analysis. The village can no longer afford to graduate half-trained ninjas. Minato replied naturally. If they're going to wear a leaf headband, they need to understand what that means. The Chunin instructors heard this and exchanged glances, but no one replied while Minato finished eating. I heard that some clans are watching the results closely. There are already jonin interested in certain children. Minato listened as they began to gossip, while he finished his meal, some asking for his opinion here and there. The bell rang throughout the entire building in the next moment, and all the teachers began preparing to leave. Minato finished eating and disappeared, returning to the classroom. The atmosphere changed instantly. The students were restless on this day. Obito was making his usual scene, saying he was getting stronger and that he was even fighting Kakashi. Minato had asked him, Guy, and Rin to remain silent about their training in his clan's courtyard, since that could attract jealousy from the other children. Minato certainly trained those with the greatest potential at his house, but he limited it to them.
As soon as they saw Minato standing behind his desk, they quickly began nudging the students who were still standing and pointing at the teacher, while they started to line up.
Minato observed everything with absolute calm.
He had a serene smile on his face and needed nothing more than that to maintain order. The children respected him,
which was great. He looked at each of the children and could tell they were under pressure today.
There was expectation. Expectations to make their parents proud, to follow the ninja career they sought, and for some, the first real step toward the battlefield.
Very well. He began. Let's start.
Minato saw a female hand raised.
What is it, Rin? Minato asked.
How will we be evaluated today, Sensei? The girl asked. We'll begin with a basic test at the start of the day, then we'll go to the training field to fight with the intention of seeing your skills with throwing weapons, taijutsu, jutsus, and combat intelligence. After lunch we'll return to the classroom. I want to see the execution of the 3 basic jutsus and also a chakra control test. In between that, you'll have another written test, but I'll reveal that one only at the end. Minato said calmly, while the students looked at one another and whispered, most thinking it was a bit harsh, but they would have to do it anyway. Thus, the class began with the written exam. Minato distributed them, taking the opportunity to perform his tricks, making the stack of papers disappear from his hand and land gently in front of each student, having placed Hiration on each of their desks. He did this so he could make the tests appear in his hand if he wanted to see whether any student was cheating.
Obito swallowed hard. Guy seemed even more excited.
Rin took a deep breath.
The others also showed various expressions as they began working on the tests.
The room fell silent and only the sound of pencils echoed through the place. It was a common academy exam, so it was easy for them, at least for some like Rin, who had better intellect among her peers. In the end, no one really had great difficulty, even Guy, who managed to write a few nonsensical things among the questions, things he usually shouts all day long, but he passed as well.
Now let's go to the training field.
With that order, the students followed to the location. There were other classes there as well, and Minato chose a corner to begin with his students. Tsukumo Hatake appeared along with some ninjas, wanting to watch the graduation of the classes, something Hiruzen did after a speech about the will of fire, and even Danzo in the shadows. After Minato greeted them, he gave the first task, shurikens. Everyone tested their aim with all types of throwing weapons. Obito tried to send one kunai to strike another mid-air before it continued to the target, something Minato had done a few times so the class could see advanced kunai throwing techniques. But Obito failed miserably. Because of the risk he took, he lost points and gave up first place in the class, even though he had excellent accuracy. Then came taijutsu training, and they were even allowed to use jutsus, already being evaluated during it. The children fought and, without surprise, Guy defeated them all. Even while receiving jutsus, he used Sara with a moderate mastery of the technique to win against the others, managing to evade their attacks. Afterward, those who hadn't used jutsus in the fights were asked by Minato to demonstrate the jutsus they had learned.
Very well. You may have lunch and rest,
Minato said, dismissing the children after evaluating all of them as he wished. Your class is indeed more advanced than the others.
Tsukumo couldn't help but comment, joining Minato.
It's a shame I've only been here for a month. I could have done much more for these children before they head to the battlefield, Minato said. I know, but you'll have a voice to change the education system. Seeing children launching jutsus, even D-rank ones, before becoming genin is incomparable.
Your class is proof that we need to make some changes, Tsukumo said. Minato nodded and they talked a little more about yesterday's meeting.
After that, Minato returned to the classroom, finding all the students preparing for the next stage of the exams.
It was the 3 basic jutsus.
One by one, each student came forward showing what they could do, except Guy, who was embarrassed when called and was nervous. Guy, you may not be good with jutsus, but you've trained your chakra control a lot. You can do this, at least these basics. And if you pass, I'll teach you a technique so you can fly through the sky like your father and me, Minato said confidently. Guy hesitated a little, but upon hearing that, he became excited and managed to perform at least the 3 basic jutsus.
After the training of the basic jutsus, they received another written test. Minato-sama. This is advanced.
Someone shouted upon seeing the papers, while others looked worried.
I know, Minato said calmly. Listen, everyone.
This test is not meant to be an official evaluation, but I made it before we began our classes today. I did it because I want you to act seriously in the face of each of the problems. There are chunin and jonin level problems, even everyday situations that you have probably already faced as genin. I want you to answer sincerely, and I will personally evaluate each one of your responses. This evaluation will be more personal than exact, unlike the previous test.
Minato said this, surprising them all.
They certainly had not expected something like that. He did not wish to receive correct answers, he wanted to see each student's opinion when faced with real battlefield problems. That was why he had applied that test. And they would also give their best, since Minato himself had said he would personally evaluate it. He was doing the same thing that Ibiki Marino would do in the Chunin exam to test the students. Some questions were meant to make them think under pressure, but Minato hoped they would answer sincerely, even if they were wrong.
There were even questions such as, what is more important, the mission or your comrades?
There were even subtle hints between the lines, explaining that each one needed to assess the situation, because if failure in the mission could cause even more deaths, it might be necessary to reconsider the decision to abandon the mission, always aiming to save the greatest number of comrades possible. It took 2 hours, but the children began turning in their papers. Minato would leave the grading for later and called them to the courtyard once more. Now that they were somewhat rested from the previous training and no student had been injured during the fights with jutsus, Minato had intervened whenever someone was in danger.
Because of that, all the students were fine. He could interfere easily whenever someone was at risk, and that was one of the reasons why having a jonin teaching made a difference, since he could allow the students to fight with their full potential without anything serious happening, Minato specifically placing a Hiraishin mark on each of them to protect them. Now I need to see your chakra control training, he said, beginning the tree climbing exercise. Child by child, they tried. All of them succeeded, but some did an excellent job. Rin and even Guy, since walking upside down and maintaining stability on vertical surfaces was a great advantage for ninjas who relied mainly on taijutsu. After nodding as the entire class managed to climb the tree, they returned to the classroom. There was already a set of headbands prepared for them. He announced student by student, and each one received their headband. No one had truly failed, because even though some had mediocre performance compared to their classmates, they still managed to execute the basic jutsus, D-rank techniques, and demonstrated excellent chakra control for their age. Starting tomorrow, you will be assigned to your teams. So arrive here at the same time. I will announce each team, and the jonins and future senseis will call you. He said, pausing. Anyway, I wish you all good luck. And congratulations. It's a shame we didn't have more time to prepare you even further, but still, now you are genins of the Leaf Village. Be proud of that. With those words, the class began to exclaim, happy and excited. It wasn't just that class, other classes were graduating as well, leaving the academy entrance crowded with parents and relatives, congratulating the children who came out with headbands on their foreheads, shouting that they were officially ninjas of the leaf. Minato watched everything through the window and returned to his desk. He still needed to correct and evaluate the students' exams, since he would have to deliver the report to their future senseis, who would be decided that night. Better said, he had 4 hours before the meeting with Tsukumo and the village's jonins, who would evaluate whether they would take on any of the new teams from that generation of genins. Minato already had his own team in mind. He would let Tsukumo send his son to the academy the next day and, officially, Kakashi, Rin, and Obito would be under his supervision. Minato couldn't help but think about how he would conduct the first missions and even about the bell test. Chapter 374, Team 7. Third-person POV. Konoha, 43. Minato arrived at the meeting along with several jonins, while the place filled with hundreds of ninjas who didn't have a team to discuss the 4 classes formed. Minato found Hayashi Hyuga and his brother among them, which Minato doubted they would take a trio of students. There were Hyugas among the classes, even 2 in his class.
but none with exceptional talent that would occupy the attention of the future clan leader. In any case, he was there to observe, just like many others. Minato had already submitted class reports and corrected exams, even Jonin-level questions for the children, which all had been very bad, but it served for them to see battlefield questions under the perspective of real danger that a Jonin position would have. Even how to deal with teams had been put into practice within the questions, giving a good foundation for the children to study team dynamics. In any case, Tsukumo stepped forward, while Minato stayed to the side with his arms crossed. Let's begin. There is a list of students who are available and we will choose their teachers and team leaders tonight. You can get the list at the counter here. Minato watched the Jonins greeting Tsukumo and him, under the look of admiration and respect from the village's ninjas toward him more than toward Tsukumo from what he could notice. You seem calm. I heard you already have a team, is that true? Minato gave a half smile before turning back to Shikaku Nara, son of the patriarch and future patriarch of the clan. His former classmate, Inoichi Yamanaka and Chusa Akimichi were also at the meeting. Yes, only one of them knows that I will be his sensei, but he doesn't know the other teammates. I intend to meet them tomorrow. Minato said. But since you're here, it means you're looking for a team. Is this the end of the famous Ino Shikabcho team? Minato asked. They are certainly very popular inside and outside of Konoha. I guess so. Shikaku scratched his head lazily, making Minato wonder if this laziness started with him and passed on to his future son, Shikamaru. After all, Shikaku's father didn't have this lazy habit during council meetings. Or maybe that would change as the members of the Nara clan grew older, since Shikaku was more responsible in the original work. In any case, Inoichi Yamanaka and Chusa Akimichi also joined in greeting Minato. Minato continued talking with his former companions and also saw Might Guy at the meeting among the Jonins. Looking at the list, this made him wonder if he would choose a team. After all, Chusa Akimichi formed Team Chusa, a team composed directly of Might Guy, Ganma Shiranui, and Ebisu, who had been Minato's students in the past weeks. All future well-known ninjas of Konoha. Although Guy gained much more prominence than the others, still, Ebisu became an elite Jonin, even one of the weakest. He was recognized by the third Hokage to the point of being entrusted with the tutelage of Konohamaru Sarutobi. Danma Shiranui became the bodyguard of the fourth Hokage himself in the original work, having been trained by the other Minato in the teleportation jutsu. Being a specialist in Shunshin, and even able to perform Hiraishin with the help of two other companions as he had done in the 4th grade ninja war when teleporting the Mizukage, Mei Terumi, to take her to the battlefield along with the other Kages, where Madara's Edo Tensei was. Minato personally had his eye on Ganma. He would have talent for space, nothing compared to Minato, but he could also help the boy grow more than he did in the original work. If he were to be his future bodyguard, it wouldn't be bad to invest in the boy anyway. Dewey had his own team, but that didn't stop him from being a sensei, and he would be a better teacher for his son than Chusa himself. In any case, the conversations and discussions among the Jonins looking for a team among those available continued. Many talked about Class A, trained by Minato and whose performance was much greater than the others. Minato also met the Aburame teacher and some other members of his former Umbu team, not the Root, which he himself eliminated, but rather the former colleagues from the Phantom Squad. Some of them were leaving the Umbu to become team leaders and train the new generation. Dewey also came to speak with Minato and he was surprised that Dewey said he would form a team with his son. I wanted to ask permission for that, he said in an embarrassed manner. You don't need to ask for my permission, but if you want, then inform Tsukumo and say that I authorized it if any other teacher has already taken the students you requested, as long as it's not mine, Minato said while Dewey thanked him and went to Tsukumo's table observing the Jonin's proposals. Among the Jonins there were about 4 members of the Uzumaki clan among them. Approaching Minato to greet him and talk, it was a treaty between the village and the clan. As a gesture of friendship, the Uzumaki clan would place 4 Jonins to train ninjas within the village, and some children would be trained by internal members of Konoha. Although Hanabi was one of them and Minato was sure that his wife Kushina would also take 3 children to train her sealing techniques, even if she wasn't in the field. In any case, the discussion continued for the rest of the night while the teams were formed. Minato stayed until the end. When it approached midnight, the Jonins were no longer choosing students, as all had already been selected. While they talked among themselves, Minato spoke with many of them, who seemed surprised by his decision as the strongest ninja in the village to become a sensei and take on 3 students from the new generation for a time. When he arrived home, the place was already silent. He found Kushina reading a book under a candle in the living room, while the others were already asleep.
You finally arrived. I left food prepared for you, let me heat it up, she said, standing up. Both went to the kitchen while talking. So you're finally going to become a teacher. I'm sure the kids will be surprised tomorrow. Kushina laughed. They had kept it a secret who Minato's future teen would be: Obito, Rin, and Kakashi. Even Tsukumo hadn't told Kakashi anything. Yes. I'm thinking about what kind of test I'll give them. I'll probably do the same one my sensei did with me, with Hanabi and with Makoto when we formed our team more than 9 years ago. Minato said in a nostalgic tone. At that time, he was already quite powerful and he managed to take Jiraiya spells. It had been quite fun. Obviously, he couldn't treat the battle at the same level as when he fought Jiraiya, launching rank A and even rank S jutsus, combining lightning, fire, and wind against his sensei's counter-fire, water and oil. That clash had drawn the attention of the entire village back then. Still, it would be fun. His team wasn't perfect, not even close, but the children's personalities were pleasant to work with and it would even be a challenge. He understood why the original Minato had grown so attached to those children, whom he and Kushina treated almost like their own, always taking care of them. Minato began to eat, and Kushina joined him as they continued talking. After that, he went to bed with her, joining the others, before looking to say goodnight to each of the children sleeping in their cribs. The next day, he had breakfast with the family and went to the academy shortly after. All the children proudly displayed their headbands. Minato waited until everyone arrived to finally interrupt the conversation. Well, now you are genins of the Hidden Leaf Village and will be under the supervision of a jonin who will become your sensei and team leader for your future missions. He will further inform you how your ninja career will proceed. That's why, in the next moment, a jonin will open this door and call your names. The 3 of you must go with him. The teams are already formed and ready, selected by performance and through an analysis of your personalities, Minato said. The children looked a little nervous as they waited for the door to open. The first jonins began to enter. Choza arrived first. Ebisu, Ganma and. He called the name of another student. The 3 boys left and closed the door. Might Guy came next. He called his son and 2 other students, changing the future Minato knew a little. There was no way to maintain the status quo, much had already changed since the beginning of his interventions in this timeline anyway. Then the Aburame teacher himself arrived and called other students. And so it went. The class gradually dispersed until only 5 remained. A moment later, only 2 were left, watching the last 3 leave as the door closed. Only Obito and Rin remained, who looked at each other before facing the teacher. Wait, aren't teams formed by 3 genins? Why are there only 2 of us? Rin asked immediately. Don't worry about that. Your 3rd teammate is coming from outside and is arriving at this very moment, Minato replied. The door opened, and a curious Kakashi entered. He had been sent there by his father, who said he would form a team with Minato. Kakashi still believed that it would be, at the very least, with Minato to compose an elite team along with Might Guy and Yamato of the Mokutan element. However, he was surprised to find Rin and Obito. What? Obito shouted, pointing at Kakashi. You? Obito exclaimed indignantly, while Rin was also surprised. Kakashi, I'm glad you arrived. I suppose introductions won't be necessary now, but this is Kakashi Hatake, the 3rd member of Team 7, Minato said. Wait. Kakashi will be on our team? Rin murmured. Kakashi didn't fail to show slight disappointment when he saw who he would be working with. Damn it, sensei. You certainly caught us by surprise. Kakashi Baka? Now you're going to say that you'll also be the team leader and our permanent sensei? Obito shouted. Minato burst out laughing. He really is our sensei, you idiot, Kakashi spoke for the first time, making Rin and Obito freeze. Well, since we're all gathered as Team 7, let's meet on the rooftop for introductions, Minato said before disappearing, leaving only the three in the room. It was something Kakashi would certainly do in the future with Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. Minato waited, knowing they had probably caused some commotion in the room after he left, Obito shouting, Kakashi mocking, and Rin trying to calm things down. Finally, they arrived on the rooftop, finding Minato sitting on a bench, waiting for them. Obito was still furious, but soon broke into a smile. Well, it doesn't matter if Kakashi Baka is on the team. Don't you see that, Rin? Minato-sensei is our team leader. We're going to be amazing, he said, adjusting the headband he now wore in place of his goggles. Rin just nodded as they sat down in front of Minato, a little nervous. Kakashi could have complained more, but he knew the value of having Minato as his sensei. He would even form a team with civilians if it meant Minato would be his teacher. After all, was there anyone better in the ninja world to train them? Well, now that we're here, I want us to start with introductions. You should say your names, what you like and what you don't like, and finally, tell me about your dreams, Minato began. They looked cautious, but Rin broke the silence. Professor, could you start with yourself, she asked. Minato nodded. Of course. As you know, I am Minato Namikaze, a jonin of the village like any other, he began. The children looked at him with a grimace. Certainly, for a war hero and the ninja known for facing threats that terrorized entire nations, he was being far too humble. About the things I like? Well, there's no doubt that I love my family, my little children and my wives. I also love fighting powerful ninjas, and I also love the village and all the people who have been with me for many years. What I don't like is being weak, not being able to protect those I have the duty to protect. And my dream is for the village to prosper, for this world to prosper. And to prepare the world to be ready for what is coming in the future. He murmured the last part, almost to himself. Still, he turned his attention back to the children. It was a strange memory. Hanabi and Makoto had done something similar before Jiraiya years ago. Their dreams, likes and dislikes hadn't changed that much. Anyway, now it's your turn, Rin, Minato prompted. Rin looked a little nervous, but took a deep breath. I'm Rin Noara. I like my friends and being with them. I don't like feeling weak either, and I want to be strong enough to help and protect them. My dream is to become a powerful kunoichi, like the women I admire. Minato nodded. He knew very well who she was talking about, his wives. Now you, Minato pointed at Obito. Obito immediately straightened up and flashed a wide smile, tightening the headband on his forehead. I'm Obito Uchiha. I like helping those who need it and also being with my friends. I also like a very special person to me, he said, casting a furtive glance at Rin, who seemed unaware. I don't like feeling weak, and I don't like Kakashi Baka either, he added, not hiding his dislike for his teammate. My dream is to become Hokage and protect everyone. He spoke innocently, and Minato nodded, feeling a strange contradiction with the alternate future he knew. That Obito who had nearly brought the world to its end. Now you, Kakashi, Minato said. Kakashi was more mature than he should have been compared to his other self in the original timeline. He had already learned certain concepts about protecting comrades, but he was still arrogant. He always wanted to be among the best and not carry any weight on the team, even though he now felt that he should protect them. My name is Kakashi Hatake. I like being strong and proving that to myself. I don't like people who talk too much, who are late, or who are a burden to the team. The direct jab at Obito was clear. Obito only didn't lunge forward with punches because Rin held him by the arm. My dream is to surpass my father, and to surpass you, Minato Namikaze. Minato nodded, satisfied. Very good, he clapped his hands once. Now we are officially Team 7. I want you to rest today, because tomorrow you will undergo a test to decide whether you will continue as a team of genins. Wait, Professor, are you saying we're not genins? That we didn't pass the academy test? Rin asked immediately. You have earned the right to wear the village's headband, but that doesn't mean you will automatically be accepted into a team.
that's why I and the other teachers still need to apply some tests. A team will certainly have much more success than a solitary ninja. Even though you have received basic genin training, those who fail to adapt to the tests of their respective jonins will not be able to continue on the team. Unfortunately, that's how things work. I hope all of you pass the test tomorrow. That goes for you as well, Kakashi, Minato said. Even though Kakashi already possessed Chunin level strength, he would still have to put in effort. Tomorrow, at Training Ground 7. Eat well, because there will be battles. Also prepare yourselves with all kinds of weapons you usually use, your opponent will be me. Unlike Kakashi in the future, who would sabotage his own students, Minato wanted to test them at full strength. He didn't need to resort to cruel tricks. He would make the test just as effective without torturing them. With that, he disappeared from the top of the academy building, leaving the three staring at the last place where Minato had been. Chapter 375, First Lesson. Third-person POV. Konoha, 43. Good morning, Kakashi-kun. Rin greeted him as they arrived early in the morning at Training Ground 7, just as Sensei had said. Kakashi only looked at her and nodded. They stayed there for a while in silence. Rin clearly wanted to start a conversation, but Kakashi remained closed off, waiting for his teammates and Sensei, and 30 minutes passed. Kakashi lost his patience. Where is Obito? He asked in a tone of disapproval. I don't know, maybe something happened? Rin said timidly, worried about her friend's delay. TSC. Kakashi clicked his tongue. He can't be that late. The teacher hasn't arrived yet either, Rin said, tilting her head slightly. There is nothing in this village that happens without Minato, Sensei knowing. He made a small pause before using the term Sensei, still getting used to calling Minato Sensei. Minato seems to know everything that is happening in the village. That seemed to surprise Rin. Kakashi knew that Minato had the ability to detect everything in the village. It was no wonder he knew the exact moment Kakashi had returned from his last mission outside the gates, confirming it personally and even giving details. Really? Rin murmured, worried about Obito. Our sensei is quite capable. He must be somewhere hidden. We might not be able to detect him, but he must be watching us. So Obito might be in trouble, Rin added. That's true, but there's nothing we can do. We're not that guy's babysitters. Kakashi clicked his tongue again, while Rin sighed carefully. It took a while, but Obito finally appeared running toward them, at the edge of Training Ground 7. You're late. Kakashi said immediately. Obito, did something happen? Rin asked, treating him completely differently. Obito growled at Kakashi. Yesterday, after Minato simply left, Kakashi and Obito started fighting. Kakashi mocked him, provoking him, while Obito was cursing at him and acting quite imperatively. The argument escalated, and Obito ended up being struck by Kakashi, forcing Rin to take care of his injuries. Before they could continue arguing, Minato appeared near them with Hiraition, arms crossed, wearing the village's Jonin uniform. What is this? Already arguing before we even begin? Minato said in a reproachful tone. Obito is late, Kakashi said mockingly. Wait, there must be some explanation, right, Obito? Rin tried to defend him. Of course there is. I was helping in. He seemed a little embarrassed. An old lady crossed the street with her groceries. Kakashi clicked his tongue even louder. Not believing that. What was that, huh, Kakashi Baka? Obito asked, not liking the mocking gesture. Hey, let's calm down. Save your energy for the test. But there are certain points we need to deal with here before we begin. After all, you are a team, and harmony and teamwork are essential, Minato said, looking from one to the other, without his usual smile. He was speaking seriously. Even Kakashi and Obito fell silent. Rin seemed worried. To begin with, Kakashi, do not openly mock your teammates. Minato was still speaking seriously. I know you get along well with Guy. I'm sure you can do the same with them too.
They will be your teammates and will work with you for years. They will be your bonds and the ones who will watch your back.
Kakashi wanted to say something, but a single look from Minato seemed to say,
if you really want to work with the best, then maybe you're not on the right team. Kakashi fell silent immediately.
If he wanted to learn from the best, he needed to be on Minato's team, even if that meant working alongside two whom he, in a way, despised for the inferior strength he believed they had.
Ahem. Someone let out with a superior air. Obito seemed satisfied that Minato had scolded Kakashi. And you, Obito.
Minato turned back to him, catching him off guard.
You have a lot to improve to begin with.
I know you were indeed late because you were helping an elderly lady cross the street with her groceries, Minato said, while Obito puffed out his chest, as if that proved he wasn't lying.
But Minato was not finished yet. However, there is a commitment to this team, Obito. You cannot arrive late. For a ninja, being late can cost the lives of your teammates.
Make a habit of leaving earlier and arriving at the agreed time.
I'm serious. Obito fell silent, surprised by the teacher's firm tone.
As noble as it is on your part to help people, your commitment will always be to your team.
Delays can cause serious problems for your teammates. Your priority must always be them, before anything else, especially on a mission, Minato concluded.
It was harsh, but there was much to be worked on in Obito.
Minato intended to turn the hard-working boy into someone competent, someone who could be a fundamental pillar for his teammates.
Even Kakashi would one day acknowledge his strength. Obito had potential even to surpass Kakashi. And if Minato managed to work with the two of them properly, perhaps Kakashi could even surpass his own father by being competitive with Obito. In the original timeline, Kakashi never reached the level of fear his father had in an even more chaotic era of the ninja world. His peak only came when he temporarily used the ocular power granted by Obito, awakening an absurd power like Susanoo. What Minato did not know was how that had happened, thinking it was a damn plot hole.
Obito tried to speak, but Minato interrupted him.
Your commitment is, and always will be, to your team, Obito.
I want you to remember that. If you want to become strong, you need to have discipline and be competent. The problem is that you cannot carry everyone's problems when it harms others, especially your team.
I'm not saying that a training session here will truly put Rin and Kakashi in danger because of your delay.
But you need to keep in mind that you cannot be late. That is a habit you will have to remove immediately. I will try.
Obito said, somewhat insecure and shrinking under the teacher's harsh words. He always helped the old ladies in the village, but Minato was cornering him by practically equating being late with putting his future teammates in danger. Rin looked at him, worried.
Another thing, put your pride aside, Obito.
If you stop wasting energy trying to belittle others or trying to make yourself look greater, and use that time to train and improve, you will not remain stuck in the same mediocrity, Minato said.
The boy shrank even more, but Minato opened a small smile. You have potential, Obito.
Potential to go very far. At the very least, to the level of a Kage.
Minato left Obito, Rin, and even Kakashi stunned. Sensei, you're joking, right? Kakashi murmured, with an incredulous look.
Not even his own father or Minato had said something like that about him.
I'm not saying that you simply have the talent to reach that level quickly.
Do not misunderstand, Obito, Minato continued, before the boy started jumping with joy at such praise. I'm saying that you have potential, but you still lack natural talent. That does not mean you cannot reach that level, but you will have to work much harder. More than Kakashi and many other geniuses. That is why, if you stop wasting time with jealousy and with things that hold you back, no matter how noble they may be, you can go far, even if the path is difficult. Obito stared at him for several seconds in silence. Even the others remained quiet after hearing that. Well, and you, Rin, must also strive, Minato continued. I truly do not know how far you can go right now, but you will not be weak and you will not be an unknown ninja being my student. However, you must strive and train hard for that. A ninja's life is not based only on rank or on the number of missions. Ninjas must train constantly. Even Kakashi is here waiting to be trained to achieve his goals.
Minato had finished. That would be the first lesson for all of them.
He needed to deal with Kakashi's arrogance, with Obito's recklessness and lack of discipline, and also with Rin's lack of confidence, which was a burden on the team for her being potentially weak. It was clearly a problematic team, but there was potential in them. And they would not need to go through an enormous tragedy to become strong.
Although Minato knew that there was potential even in a tragedy.
Rin could become the Jinchuriki of the Three Tails, Obito could awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, and with Mokuton cells, Kamui would not leave him blind. Minato did not intend to make them suffer real tragedies to achieve that. He had already done something similar in the past. Makoto had to face extreme situations to awaken certain powers during the Second War, which left her traumatized and angry at Minato for a time, especially when he simulated his own death in front of her, at a time when she did not yet fully understand his intangibility ability. Minato still had much to think about in order to know how to reach the maximum level of these children. For now, he needed to focus on the children in front of him without thinking too much about the future yet, since now they would officially become part of his team. He uncrossed his arms and took something from his pocket.
Well, I know you have a lot to think about, but we will deal with that after you pass the test.
After all, there is still the test to decide whether you will work with me or not.
Minato then raised his hand, revealing 2 bells. The test is as follows.
You must face me with everything you have, even with killing intent, with the objective of taking these bells.
But, there are only 2? Rin murmured cautiously.
She did not like that.
2 bells for 3 genin. Exactly. Everything will depend on your performance. Those who manage to get the bells will earn a rank B jutsu from the Namikaze clan, Minato said.
Even Kakashi was surprised.
The newly formed Namikaze clan was already known for all the treasure it supposedly possessed, since Minato had been accumulating various techniques. From variations of the Uchiha jutsus that Makoto mastered, advanced sealing techniques of the Uzumaki clan, acquired from Mito-sama and within the Uzumaki clan. The legendary jutsus of the Senju clan and many techniques that Hanabi mastered from the Hyuga clan. Lastly, the jutsus executed and created by Minato. He had a repertoire of S-rank jutsus.
All the combinations accumulated and created by Minato and his wives.
All these techniques were kept in sealed vaults, protecting even forbidden jutsus. There were hundreds of jutsu scrolls in the Namikaze clan's vault, at the very least.
A rank B jutsu would certainly make me stronger, Obito said, gaining more confidence. But I doubt we can get those bells from you, Kakashi murmured, being more realistic. Do not be so discouraged.
I have a rule.
I will limit myself to the 3 basic academy jutsus and taijutsu.
What do you think? Minato said. Wait, you're only going to use the 3 basics? And we can even use the jutsus we learned at the academy with you, sensei? Rin asked immediately. Minato nodded. As I said, you can come at me with everything, with the intent to kill. But do not think it will be easy.
I may not use my light abilities, my more powerful jutsus, or even my teleportation, but I am still one of the most powerful ninjas in the world when it comes to taijutsu.
Perhaps the most powerful.
He had not yet faced someone with the 8 gates fully released to state that with absolute certainty. But at the peak of his haki, he was confident that he could even fight against the gate of death without needing to use the intangibility of his light fruit to protect himself. In any case, Minato showed the bells and fastened them to his waist.
Let's begin.
He announced this before disappearing in an explosion of smoke, leaving a log behind. The 3 immediately moved into combat positions and also vanished from there, hiding themselves.
The bell test began at that moment. Chapter 376, Bell Test 01. Third Person POV. Konoha, 43.
Minato was observing each of his students from a corner of the training field, without anyone in that position noticing. All of them were in different positions, but they certainly were not working as a team while trying to search for him. They were acting individually, unfortunately.
Kakashi is the most experienced of the 2, obviously. He knows how to hide.
The other two are far too exposed, Minato began to analyze. Kakashi was among the leaves of the trees, concealed under an illusion jutsu cast over a tree trunk, which gave the appearance that there was no one there, using a chameleon-like form to hide in the same color as the tree trunk.
Anyone looking there would not be able to see him.
Obito, on the other hand, was on top of a branch, behind leaves, but clearly trying to get Rin's attention, who was hiding behind a tree. It was evident that Minato could not just stand there waiting for his students to find him. He would attack first. His body disappeared, advancing through the sky without using teleportation, only with his sorrow speed. Quickly, he passed over the field without any of them noticing, observing through haki any glance in his direction, ready to disappear again if necessary.
He went to where Obito was.
The boy was speaking very quietly.
Hey, pissed, he tried to call Rin, but did not want to leave his hiding spot.
What is it, Obito? The voice came.
How about we fight together against Sensei?
That Kakashi Baka won't fight with us, said Obito before blinking a few times. That was certainly not Rin's voice, and it was coming right from behind him. Obito slowly began to turn his head until he found his teacher there, displaying a closed-eye smile. He was answering in Rin's place. I don't know, Obito, the teacher is going to be very strong, Minato said with a slightly altered voice, trying to sound feminine, but failing miserably at it.
Obito began to sweat coldly, not reacting in the first few seconds.
First lesson, do not expose yourself so much, you are on enemy battlefield, do not be sloppy about it.
Minato spoke simply.
Rin was nearby, ignoring Obito's low calls so the teacher would not discover her. Soon, she was startled when, suddenly, Obito's scream came from that side of the forest.
Obito!
Rin immediately left her hiding spot, jumping onto the tree while advancing to the location. She found Obito tied upside down, trapped by a rope tied to the tree branch. He swung on the rope as his body went from side to side, trying to speak, but there was a gag made of ropes in his mouth, and he could only emit muffled sounds. Rin quickly cut the rope and grabbed him, starting to untie him. Is Sensei around here? Rin asked immediately. Obito opened a strange smile, and in the next instant, his body transformed with an explosion of smoke, revealing the teacher himself.
Second lesson, never rely only on your eyes.
Rin was shocked as she was caught and tied up, thrown beside Obito, who was restrained near the trunk where they had started their first conversation before.
Minato removed the gag from each of them. Wait here until I deal with Kakashi.
He simply said that and disappeared before they could say anything. The two of them stayed there, not knowing how to react. They had been caught far too quickly. Kakashi was hidden until, suddenly, something caught the attention of his instincts. He was forced to dodge something that came flying at high speed, breaking the wood and leaving a small hole in the trunk behind him. He looked stunned. Minato appeared on another branch, raising both hands and pointing them as if they were pistols. Suddenly, he began firing balls of air. Kakashi was immediately startled by that. The entire trunk behind him began to be riddled, as if they were bullet shots. Something he obviously did not recognize. Minato fired with his hands in that modern gun-like shape, launching air projectiles using one of the Navy's 6 styles, Shirahama. Kakashi could not help but grow increasingly surprised as he saw his hiding spot being destroyed quickly. The tree began to crack in half due to the constant impact and started to fall with so many holes in it. He had to escape more shots advancing toward him, while Minato kept firing, breaking everything in the forest behind Kakashi.
Damn!
He could not believe the speed of that style advancing against him while he tried to flee. He barely had time to react when Minato appeared in front of him with Saru. If you brought me here on purpose, then there must be some kind of trap, Minato spoke in front of him, standing on a branch waiting for Kakashi to approach. Kakashi immediately retreated, stepping onto another branch and jumping back, but grabbing several kunai and throwing them at Minato. He caught the first and quickly moved his own kunai, defending against the others. The sound of metal continued as the kunai clashed, but one went in another direction, hitting a wire at the corner of the tree. In the next instant, 2 logs were pulled from opposite sides, trying to crush Minato. He simply used another Navy style Iron Body. The log slammed hard against his shoulders, but only cracked and recoiled a few centimeters.
Kakashi's eyes widened. You must be wondering what my body is made of. Impressive, isn't it? Minato asked calmly. Without any damage from the logs. Kakashi became even more stunned when he saw Minato disappear from where he stood and reappear above him with Saru. It was the technique he had seen when Minato fought Guy. Not even his eyes could follow him. Minato simply kicked Kakashi, launching his body downward.
While falling, Kakashi made several hand seals before hitting the ground, which exploded into smoke, leaving a log behind. Substitution, interesting, Minato said, raising the back end of the kunai that was still in his hand, which he had used to defend himself earlier. The ring at the end caught the tip of another kunai that was advancing from the right, very close to his face. Kakashi had thrown it from 3 trees away. Minato pulled the second kunai into his other hand and held both, looking directly at Kakashi. You are certainly different from the other two, but you still have a lot to learn, he said before exploding into smoke. A clone. Kakashi barely had time to react when another Minato appeared at his side, grabbing him and stunning him. Before he could do anything, Kakashi was thrown and tied up together with Obito and Rin. You got caught too, Kakashi Baka, Obito grumbled. Minato fired an air bullet that hit Obito's forehead, not enough to pierce it, but enough to make him groan in pain. He stared at Sensei's finger pointed in his direction. What did I tell you before, Obito? Do not try to belittle others. You are at the same level as him, or even worse, because Kakashi was the one who gave me the most trouble among you 3-inch, Minato said. We lost, Sensei, Rin seemed very worried. Even Kakashi and Obito shuddered. It has only been 15 minutes since we started the test. I think it is too early to end it. I will give you another chance. This time, I will not be the attacker. I will let you come up with a better plan. If you want, come to me. I will be in the middle of the training field. Minato spoke quickly and fired an air bullet to cut the central point where the ropes were tied, freeing them immediately. You said you would only use basic jutsus, Kakashi muttered. I said I would only use taijutsu. What you are seeing is a direct ability of the body. I am not using chakra. I can fire these air bullets as much as I want. My body is powerful enough to create an alteration in the air molecules in the air. This is not chakra. It is the most advanced taijutsu in the ninja world. Minato replied, leaving Kakashi even more stunned. How could someone do that without using chakra? That could massacre a large number of ninjas. But Sensei was doing something only with his own body? He had seen the entire forest breaking from those air bullets while trying to escape. In any case, Kakashi had no time to ask anything else, because Minato simply disappeared and reappeared in the middle of the field. He then brought his hand to his pouch and took out a small book, a novel that, in reality, would only be released a month from now in the bookstores. It was by Jiraiya, but it was not perverted like he liked to write. It was the story of Naruto, portraying the adventures of Jiraiya as he traveled through the ninja world, meeting various peculiar characters and always seeking an answer to achieve peace, a way for people to understand one another. The final answer of the book was that Naruto never gave up until he found the right answer to bring peace and stability to the ninja world, where people hate each other so much. The book had been written a few years earlier, but it needed editing. With all the turmoil involving the Uzumaki clan, Jiraiya barely had time to review it properly, working as a spy the entire time. Minato wanted to read that specific book. He stayed there, apparently no longer paying attention to his surroundings, although he could perfectly sense his students advancing through the forest, creating better traps than Kakashi's previous ones. Minato had defeated his students with ease on purpose, so that they would be forced to work as a team and prepare themselves better. Kakashi was not working as a team as he had expected, but trying to handle Minato better than last time, and even Rin was preparing traps. They would certainly stay alert waiting for Minato, or try to lure him. However, there was one of them who reminded him very much of a character who, coincidentally, had the same name as the protagonist of the book Minato was reading. Obito was standing in front of him, looking very much like the original Naruto in the same test, but done by Kakashi.
Minato lowered the book and looked at him. Obito opened a smile and touched his headband.
"Sensei, I am here to defeat you," he said confidently.
"Oh, really? Then come," Minato provoked.
Immediately, Obito ran toward him, jumping and advancing with a kick, while Minato still turned his eyes back to the book. Obito clicked his tongue, frustrated, and tried to land a kick on Sensei's head, who simply dodged smoothly. Obito tried to throw another punch, but Minato merely raised his elbow, defending without taking his eyes off the small novel. Frustrated, Obito began grabbing kunai and throwing them at Minato, who tilted his head away from some and moved his body away from others. "Since that is how it is," he growled, beginning to form several hand seals.
Minato watched as the fire-style jutsu was completed.
In the next moment, flames advanced toward him, but he seemed to swallow them.
Obito immediately prepared himself for an attack.
He knew the teacher would not fall so easily. His eyes scanned the surroundings, ignoring the flames still burning, until he saw a shadow on the ground. He looked up and saw Minato standing in the air, kicking the air in small impulses to remain suspended. Since he could not use his light abilities to float, he was using Jeppo, yet still reading the book.
"Hey, that's not fair," Obito shouted.
Minato stopped reading at that moment and looked at him.
"Fair does not exist on the battlefield, Obito. You will always have to adapt to the enemy you face."
He said that seriously, making Obito feel a bad premonition.
Minato advanced toward him with a kick, in a movement that resembled the scene of Might Guy using the 8th gate and running through the air against Madara. That left Obito in panic, starting to run backward.
"He is just a child," Minato murmured to himself as he saw the frightened boy running from him, while he advanced like a predator.
"It is over, Obito." Minato grabbed his neck and placed him on the ground. However, Obito's body turned into smoke, revealing a log. Minato had already noticed the moment of substitution, but he liked seeing that the boy was using the basic jutsus.
Obito appeared behind a tree and threw kunai directly at Minato, who grabbed the very log and placed it in front of his body. The blades embedded themselves in the wood, and then he hurled the log with force. Obito was surprised, being struck by the very same log. The impact made him fall to the ground, left breathless after taking the blow hard.
"That was smart, but do not think I will go easy on you, Obito," Minato said as he approached. Suddenly, two hands came out of the ground, grabbing his legs. It was Kakashi, pulling him down into the earth. Minato was buried up to his neck. "An earth-style jutsu, interesting,"
Minato said while sensing Kakashi approaching from beneath the ground. However, Minato simply broke the soil with brute force before Kakashi could grab the bells and seize the Chunin's hand, jumping out and bringing the boy along with him. Kakashi had no choice but to be thrown against the ground, with Minato still in the air. Obito saw all of that quickly, while Kakashi fell to the ground, coughing. "Damn, he is way too strong," Obito muttered, still on the ground. But Kakashi had not given up. He stopped coughing and looked seriously at the teacher, standing near the hole Minato had created with brute force. Kakashi began forming several hand seals. Then, Chidori started to form, creating the lightning blade, as many like to call it.
Chidori.
Obito looked quite surprised at the lightning roaring in Kakashi's hand, like a wild roar. In the next instant, Kakashi shot forward, advancing toward Minato.
"Your speed is good," Minato had to praise the boy.
Kakashi was already in front of him, thrusting forward and striking directly into his chest. Incredibly, it went straight through him, making Obito exclaim behind them, while Kakashi himself widened his eyes. "However, you cannot see very well what is happening right in front of you." "That gave me time to perform a substitution jutsu."
Minato spoke with his chest pierced before exploding into smoke.
But instead of a log, a giant teddy bear appeared. Before Kakashi could react, the bear completely wrapped around him. Kakashi lost stability of the jutsu and began looking around, realizing he was trapped inside what seemed to be a giant teddy bear. Something immediately frightened him when small papers began to catch fire.
"This is..." Kakashi's eyes widened.
Even Obito was stunned, looking around everywhere, not seeing the teacher anywhere.
Kakashi was trapped, surrounded by explosive tags about to detonate, and he could not even escape from the bear's embrace. Obito immediately ran toward him. "You idiot! Do you want to die?" Obito exclaimed as he grabbed Kakashi, trying to pull him out of the bear. He could not free him. Even Kakashi tried to generate more lightning, but he could not cut the bindings in time. The explosive tags were about to detonate. At that moment, Obito and Kakashi could only wait for the worst. Suddenly, everything went off. But instead of explosions and the death of the two children, colorful ribbons and small pieces of festive paper burst around them, like at a party. The explosive tags were fake. "Well, it's not like I would kill my own students. But honestly, I am disappointed in you." Minato appeared behind them. Obito was still trying to pull the bear's hands away from Kakashi, but froze when he realized the sudden change in the situation. Minato simply grabbed them and took them back to the logs again. "Now I am going to take care of Rin. You two stay there until I return." Minato said this and disappeared, leaving the two still stunned by what had just happened. Chapter 377, Bell Test 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, 43. Rin was tied up and thrown in front of her other two teammates. Since she had prepared the traps, Minato went to her, and, for the second time, the entire team was defeated. The three stood perplexed once again, in front of the logs. "Damn," Obito grumbled. Kakashi said nothing. He remained silent, but clearly disappointed in himself. Rin had her head lowered. She was discouraged. "What kind of discouragement is this? Do you have to be like that?" Minato mocked. Kakashi glared at him, indignant, but remained silent, as if to say that, being much more powerful than them, how could he complain about their reactions? "Do you know why you're not achieving a good result?" Minato continued. "Because you lack teamwork. In the 2 or 3 times we fought, you simply acted individually. Kakashi, you took advantage while I was dealing with Obito to try to gain an opening. Smart on your part. At the same time, Obito, when you realized the danger, you charged forward without hesitation, even though you could have died because of it." Minato spoke calmly, while observing the boys' reactions. Kakashi seemed somewhat troubled by that. He certainly still remembered Obito running toward him, trying to pull him away from the bear filled with supposed paper bombs. "This serves as a direct lesson for you, Kakashi. They are your teammates. No matter how much you may mock and underestimate them, Obito didn't think twice before running to you and trying to save you." He then turned his gaze to Obito. "And you, Obito, must become stronger and broaden your options. What you did there with Kakashi was noble, but at the same time a futile sacrifice. You weren't able to pull him away and would have died together with him if it had been a real situation on the battlefield. I don't think you should sacrifice yourself uselessly." The two boys seemed to reflect on what had been said. There was no anger nor heated exclamations. Only silence. "Let's do the following," Minato spoke again. "We'll try a third time. I will leave now only a shadow clone, which will be limited to taijutsu and will not have the same abilities as my original body. It will be your new challenge. But even so, at your current level, you won't stand a chance of facing it alone. That's why you will need to work as a team." He made a brief pause, his gaze much more serious than usual. "I will give you one more chance. And this will decide whether you will remain my students or not. It no longer depends solely on gaining some special jutsu from my vaults. This final challenge will put your ninja careers into question." Minato seemed to be cornering them against the wall. This was his ultimatum. "Now you have 10 minutes to organize yourselves and begin the test." With those words, Minato crossed his fingers and used the shadow clone jutsu. A clone reappeared at his side. He handed the bells to the clone then disappeared, moving toward the center of the training field, while Minato once again turned his attention back to them. "Begin." "Now I will be at a distance, observing," he said and, right after, disappeared like a ray of light, ascending into the sky. In that same instant, Minato appeared about 800 meters away, floating in the air while observing both the training field and the entire village. He could even sense Kushina's chakra, watching him from the village's monitoring room at that very moment.
On the ground, the three children looked at one another. They didn't seem to know exactly what to do at that moment.
Well, it's a clone now, right?
Shouldn't it be easy? Obito was the first to break the silence, his tone hesitant.
Don't underestimate even one of Minato's clones. Did you know I heard he massacred several Suna ninjas using only clones in Yuzushiogakure?
Kakashi replied seriously. Are we really going to pass this? Rin seemed far more downcast. All her traps had been easily undone by Minato.
Look.
Kakashi thought for a moment before finally speaking. I think the teacher made an effort to show us the difference between our strengths.
The difference?
We already know he's much stronger than us, and he wasn't even using jutsus, Obito said, discouraged. Wait, Obito, let Kakashi speak, Rin said, while Kakashi waited and Obito crossed his arms.
Then just say it already, Kakashi.
What do you think we have to do? Obito asked, his pride wounded.
I think Sensei wants us to deal with the clone as a team.
Even though it's just a clone, it must be extremely strong. And as much as I hate to admit it, when we work together, we're stronger. If we combine our strength, we'll have better chances. The three looked at one another and, in the end, nodded.
Minato was listening to the entire conversation from above.
He sighed before opening a small smile. There were many issues to work on, but finally even Kakashi was yielding. Obito was also setting aside his pride, while Rin tried to be useful. Rin and Obito had already trained with jutsus at the academy. They were stronger, this could be used against the clone, with the two acting in sync. After a while, they all nodded again and began to move, preparing to advance. The clone stood still at a distance, a book in his right hand, while noticing the three moving slowly through the forest. He didn't hear the plan, since he didn't possess observation haki like the original Minato, but he had good natural senses. He waited patiently as the children prepared themselves. In the next moment, Obito ran toward the clone, just like in the previous attempt. Hey! Quickly, he launched into a taijutsu attack, while the clone didn't even seem to consider him a challenge. He kept reading the book while dodging the blows, until he landed a punch on Obito's chest. The boy's body turned into smoke and disappeared. A clone, Minato's clone, observed. In the next instant, several kunai began flying in his direction. He jumped a few meters backward before they collided with the ground, and the paper bombs attached to them began to explode. Boom! That caught the clone off guard. He leapt backward in retreat, but more paper bombs began to fall over him as he continued dodging the explosions. The paper bombs came from two sides. After a few seconds, the three of them were throwing explosives at the clone at the same time. Up above, Minato watched, satisfied. Later, he would have to replace the paper bombs that Rin had saved up to buy and given to Kakashi and Obito to use with the intention of passing the test. Paper bombs weren't something any of them could produce, which made them especially expensive for Rin and Obito. At a certain moment, they stopped throwing explosives, and Obito and Rin reappeared, forming several hand seals. Both joined together and expelled fire and water simultaneously. The contact between the two elements generated a steam explosion that engulfed the training field. Minato's clone quickly formed hand seals and used substitution as the steam spread, along with splashes of water that even reached the three of them. Did we get him? Obito said as he approached Rin in the middle of the mist. The instant he did so, Rin suddenly moved and delivered a kick against Obito, who turned into smoke. How did you figure it out? Minato opened a smile, lightly dragging himself across the ground. The bell still echoed at his waist. He soon realized the reason. Rin, who was beside him, struck him, but she also turned into smoke. In her place, Kakashi appeared. Kakashi had transformed into Rin and used a water-style jutsu to draw the clone's attention. When Minato used substitution, he ended up attacking the transformed Obito, repeating the transformation strategy that the original had used before. Meanwhile, behind a tree, a rope snapped, freeing the real Obito with the help of the real Rin. Minato saw Obito and Rin appear beside Kakashi. Well,
You are working together, Minato's clone said, quite satisfied.
But it's still far from over.
You'll have to do more than that.
He took a battle stance, and the three did the same.
The battlefield intensified. The children began using jutsus more frequently.
They still had a good reserve of chakra, since Minato himself had secretly replenished part of their energy when he captured them earlier,
using his ability to draw in chakra and even donate it.
Not at Naruto's level with Kurama's chakra, but he had that capability as well.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to use so many jutsus.
Flames, water, earth-style jutsus, and sparks filled the field as the three fought together against the clone, who could only use the three basic jutsus and taijutsu. At a certain moment, the clone found himself cornered and had to retreat upon noticing Obito and the real Rin once again launching their fire and water combination. As he retreated, forming hand seals, a wall of earth rose behind him, with several dog-shaped figures molded across its surface. It was at that moment that the clone was finally caught. He collided against the earth wall and had no way to escape the combined attack. The flames and water exploded against him, and his body turned into smoke, being destroyed.
We did it, Obito said. He was exhausted.
Rin knelt on the ground, breathing heavily. Kakashi also approached. He had several scratches across his body. He had spent a considerable amount of chakra, but he was visibly less exhausted than the other two.
I think so, Rin murmured.
Suddenly, a flash of light came from the sky and struck the ground forcefully. A gust of wind arose from that point, dispersing the mist created by the steam. The scattered fire and water quickly dissipated.
The original Minato was there.
He walked toward the bells in the middle of the destroyed ground.
The only thing left of the clone. He picked them up and looked satisfied before approaching.
Well, this is already a start.
We won.
We won, Minato-sensei, Obito exclaimed, almost unable to believe his own words.
We defeated a clone of his that couldn't even use jutsus.
Obito, don't be so happy. In fact, it's even embarrassing that we had so much trouble, Kakashi murmured, watching Sensei approach with the two bells.
You certainly learned the essence of the test.
With that, you are approved, Minato said with a smile.
And about the jutsus, Sensei?
You said only two would win, Kakashi asked before Obito and Rin could start celebrating loudly. The matter of the rewards still remained.
About that. Minato seemed to think for a moment. I will give one jutsu to each of you. Everyone was surprised. I won't be stingy.
After seeing you fight united and perform better than I expected, each of you deserves a scroll. All of you passed the test and now officially form Team 7, led by me.
Starting tomorrow, we will begin taking official missions.
Rin and Obito shouted happily.
Kakashi seemed satisfied as well, though more restrained. He watched the two celebrating, thoughtful.
They had shown much more efficiency fighting together than he had expected. Minato noticed that and felt pleased. Kakashi seemed more willing to remain with the team and trust his teammates. It was a great start for the team. Now they could see their own potential when working together. At least they would have a few days to strengthen their coordination before Minato left for the mission to the Land of Iron with his wife.
Well, since it's almost noon and you passed, how about we celebrate at Ichiraku Ramen? After that, I want to talk about your training before we start missions tomorrow. Minato said this as they all nodded and left the training field.
They moved through the village toward the center, drawing the attention of ninjas and civilians, who whispered upon seeing them beside Minato, wondering if those children were truly the official team of the now sensei Minato Namikaze. Something normal, considering someone as famous as him. From that moment on, his students would also be constantly observed and talked about by everyone around them. In any case, he entered the restaurant and asked Tucci to serve them while they enjoyed their ramen. After that, they went to the Namikaze clan, where they would receive training before officially starting their missions the next day. A week later, the children would have no idea that they would already receive an S-rank mission the moment they left the village. But Minato would leave that for the last minute. Chapter 378, Catching Cats and Pulling Weeds 01. Third-person POV.
Konoha, 43.
So are you going to take this mission? Tsukumo looked at Minato, thoughtful and at the same time surprised, as he stared at the scroll Minato had chosen among so many missions. Tsukumo had personally told Minato to go to the Hokage's office instead of picking one in the mission room, since he wanted to talk more privately with his son's new official teacher.
Of course. Why not? Minato gave a small smile, ironizing.
Well, I just didn't expect this from you, Tsukumo said, looking at the low-rank mission.
Who was Minato Namikaze?
The ninja who could make any great nation in this world panic just by stepping within their borders, causing all their forces to prepare for a possible war, whether elite ninjas, bijus, or kages, everything they had to face a potential threat that could destroy their nation.
But what would the figure with the highest bounty alive in the bingo book do as a mission? Hunt lost cats.
Tsukumo took some time to understand, although it was generally like this that ninja teams with genin started, but he still felt slightly dizzy knowing that the one doing this was precisely him.
My team has to start somewhere.
Even if your son is already talented enough to almost enter the Jonin category, I want him to go through a better adaptation to work as a team among the 3-inch, Minato said. There was not much more to say about that.
All right. That is perfectly valid coming from you, Minato.
I was just surprised, but I fully trust your supervision, both of Kakashi and the other children, he replied, still watching Minato closely.
However, I want to talk to you about them. Tell me, how far do you think those 3 can go?
How far do you think my son can go? He asked. It was a valid question from a father, especially when he was talking about his own son.
Obviously, Minato would train them.
Tsukumo knew they would not be simple ninjas, not in that man's hands.
Even the nickname Yellow Flash of Konoha had been set aside.
It was no longer necessary to use nicknames to scare anyone, the name Minato Namikaze alone upheld its own legend.
Minato thought for a moment.
Well, honestly, Kakashi does not have the same talent as you, Minato spoke sincerely after hesitating a little. Tsukumo might be disappointed by that. Tsukumo, the White Fang of Konoha, had always been a more powerful name than Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja, had been until the end of the story. Perhaps because Kakashi had to restrain the Sharingan, which consumed a great deal of chakra, or perhaps because he had abandoned Kenjutsu. Minato could not say for sure, but in his opinion, Kakashi did not possess the same qualities as his father to the point of making an entire nation tremble as the name of the White Fang was capable of doing.
Tsukumo looked at him and nodded.
He seemed to accept his son's negative points. There was no way to change that.
The other 2 also lacked talent.
If I were to choose only the most talented, I would have chosen others.
But no. I preferred these 2, along with your son.
And it is obvious that Kakashi is far more talented than the others.
Minato made a brief pause.
But I see potential in the 3 of them, he concluded. Potential does not mean talent, and talent does not mean potential. Potential is how far you can go, while talent is how quickly you learn things and master them.
With talent, you acquire much more quickly, however, that may not mean much.
An example would be Neji, who had unique talent within the clan, but compared to Naruto's potential, his talent became insignificant. Naruto led all the ninjas of the world against Madara, Obito, and the 10 Tails.
As for Neji, he ended up becoming just another casualty in the middle of a war.
If Minato managed to reintroduce Kenjutsu to Kakashi, develop Kamui, and even implant wood cells into Obito, as well as perhaps place the 3 tails and turn Rin into a Jinchuriki, that would put them in a category far above all the ninjas of this generation.
Perhaps only a guy using the 8 gates would be capable of fighting them.
Well, if you have that vision, Tsukumo did not know exactly what Minato's plans were, but he would not ask too much nor interfere. That was his son's teacher. If he had plans to make them powerful, then he would trust the man who would lead Konoha in a not-so-distant future, or so he hoped.
Minato was about to leave, but Tsukumo had not finished yet. You spoke about Kenjutsu.
Well, that is something my son no longer practices much, but he still keeps his sword. I was thinking of teaching him some techniques, but I think it is more appropriate that you do it, he said, while pulling out a scroll. Here there are 12 sword techniques inside this scroll.
It has been a while since I passed anything on to you, has it not? So I thought about giving this to you.
Since I know you are smart and talented enough to learn on your own, I will only take a look at the final result, but I would like you to pass this on to my son in the future. He will certainly learn it, for I know he may greatly admire this path, Tsukumo concluded.
Minato raised an eyebrow.
Tsukumo had taught him ninja kenjutsu, and that had given him an opening into the fencing style, in which he had not gone very deep beyond what his friend Hataki from the Ghost Squad, Ghost, who had passed away many years ago, had taught him. Tsukumo had taught him after Minato asked, back at a time when Tsukumo was not very popular in the village. Tsukumo had given him great progress in the art of kenjutsu, being, basically, his teacher.
Minato took the scroll, felt the seals that stored the 12 techniques within it, and nodded.
It was not every day that he received powerful techniques from the Hataki clan, which would also go into the Namikaze vault. Well, then I should be grateful, since you are being so generous. There is no reason to refuse, is there?
Sensei. Minato gave a smile and Tsukumo nodded, satisfied. After that, Minato stored the scroll, said goodbye to Tsukumo, and disappeared from the Hokage's office. He flew across the village sky, observing Makoto and Suna taking care of their children in their homes, while Kushina was at her part-time job in the village's ceiling sector. Hanabi was outside the village, within the Uzumaki clan, meeting her 3 official students. Minato soon turned his attention to where his 3 students were, waiting for him at the spot marked the previous day, on a somewhat isolated park bench in the middle of a park. He transformed into light and advanced toward that area, drawing the attention of everyone who saw the light crossing Konoha's sky, leaving behind a trail of golden particles. The 3 immediately looked up when they saw a light flying in a straight line before stopping at that point and descending right on top of them like a laser, like a flickering fluorescent lamp, until it fully materialized. Minato appeared before them. "Sensei, you're late," Obito said, despite the evident admiration. He crossed his arms, while the other 2 simply looked at Minato and his abilities with equal fascination. "But I have to say, that was really awesome." "Can you teach me to do that too?" Obito asked, giving a puppy dog look. He found Minato's entrance incredible. Who would not want to fly across the sky like a shooting star before landing in front of anywhere? He could already imagine himself doing that and becoming popular. Minato placed a hand on his head. "Well, that is unfortunately something only I can do." "It comes from lineage," Minato said, although he doubted that even his children could produce that with chakra the way he did with his fruit. "Anyway, I am not late," Minato continued. "There are 4 minutes left. And I must admit," he set his gaze on Obito, "you were not late." Those words made Obito excited, and he struck his own chest. "Sensei, I will not be late anymore," he declared. It seemed that the lessons Minato had given him about how his team needed to rely on him before anything else were working. In truth, the 3 had been thoughtful since the previous day, when the test ended and they went to train until nightfall on the Namikaze properties. Minato had spoken about their flaws and strengths, and then began working on them with the 3. It was quite simple for him. He could create clones at will to push them to their limits or even guide each one personally, always keeping a copy of himself as a personal instructor beside each of them. "Well, as you know, today will be our first day doing missions," he said, while the 3 looked quite excited, their eyes shining when Minato showed the scroll. "Let's stay at this for a week. We will do missions in the morning and, in the afternoon, I want you to train at my house," Minato explained. For now, he wanted to avoid the public training fields, because in the middle of the previous day's test, several onlookers had started watching them. Even though the 2 children had not noticed, Minato knew Kakashi had perceived part of it. It was a bit irritating, since everyone wanted to see how Minato Namikaze would train his team, which they expected to be legendary. He could even feel their disappointment when they saw the performance of the 3, which made Minato a little frustrated. What more could they expect from 3 children just starting their ninja lives now? He had risen as a genin at 10 years old, and it was only through achievements in the war that he began to gain new ranks, years later. "Let's go," Minato said, jumping onto the top of a house. The children quickly followed him, moving across the rooftops until they reached a common street in Konoha. It was not very busy, it was a middle-class residential area, where a normal family would live.
They were not poor, but they were not rich either. The three children were a little confused. It was not exactly there that they expected to find their first mission. Minato ignored their reaction, approached one of the residences, and knocked on the door. Immediately, heavy footsteps echoed from the other side, and the door opened, revealing a chubby woman, who looked at Minato hopefully, as if waiting for something.
"Tell me, did you bring my ronk?" the woman asked immediately. She did not even recognize Minato. She was far too worried about her cat. "Actually, no, ma'am.
We came here after taking your mission submitted last night," he explained, showing the scroll.
"What? Why did you come without my cat?" "Go back and search immediately," she snapped.
Minato could not help a vein popping on his forehead, irritated with that woman, while the three children looked on without understanding any of it. They had only heard the name Ronk, which seemed to be something important the woman had lost. "What kind of mission is this?" Rin murmured. "I believe Ronk must be a powerful artifact capable of destroying Konoha. We must save the village from some catastrophe," Obito commented, serious.
"Maybe it is a code for us to invade a great nation."
"Maybe she is an informant and our mission is to invade a country," Kakashi narrowed his eyes, analyzing. "What kind of things are you thinking?" Rin asked, stunned, looking at the two before turning her attention back to their sensei, who was staring at the frustrated woman.
"Well, what can you expect? Look who our teacher is."
"We must be taking part in a Ranka mission, right?" Obito said, trying to find some logic.
"Maybe it is rank S." "A rank SS," Obito completed.
"That does not exist, but maybe it could be an SSS," Kakashi replied, curious. "I have never heard of missions above rank S."
"Could that exist? With our sensei, maybe?"
Rin looked at them with empty eyes.
"What kind of mission would their teacher make them go through?" "Ma'am, we need a bit more information." Minato turned to the woman before looking at the children.
"Listen, always seek information from the client before starting a mission.
Ask everything and be creative with your questions. All information is valid and important."
Minato opened the scroll, and the children swallowed dryly. Whatever was written there had to be something ultra-secret. It says here that he has yellow fur with white spots, is extremely lazy, has very long fur, and wears a collar with a heart drawn on it, Minato read before turning back to the woman.
"Is there any more information about your cat?"
"Cat," Obito repeated behind Minato. The three looked at one another before turning their attention back to the woman, who finally softened her expression before beginning to speak. "Well, my Ronk usually stretches a lot, but lately he has been in heat and running away.
Please, find him for me."
"My son needs to come back home," the woman said. She looked like one of those spinsters who never married a man but kept a strong maternal instinct directed toward her pet. Minato could sense that, inside the house, there were several photos of the cat hanging on decorative plates on the wall and in frames. There was even an exclusive room for the cat. She treated the cat like a son and grew desperate whenever he ran away.
"I understand. Well, thank you for everything," Minato replied.
He turned his attention back to the children, who were staring at him with blank expressions.
"Are you serious? A cat?" They could not believe it.
"Do not be foolish," Minato said, lightly tapping each of their heads at the speed of light without hurting them. That pulled them out of their shocked state. Minato expanded his senses throughout the village in an instant and located the cat about 200 meters away.
He was at a neighbor's house, lazily lying under a tree, sleeping peacefully. He looked happy, but they had a mission. "Well, now I want you to search for this cat. I will only be monitoring. We have until noon to capture him, understood?" Minato said. The three had no choice but to accept the mission. Chapter 379, Catching Cats and Pulling Weeds 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, 43. Minato was standing on top of a roof, reading the scrolls he had received from Tsukumo.
Meanwhile, he watched Rin running after a yellow cat. Despite being fat, it was quite agile, to the point of leaving a graduated genin unable to catch it. As it ran toward a corner where there was a bush, it suddenly exploded into smoke.
"Phew!
The one who appeared was Obito, who cancelled the transformation jutsu and tried to grab the cat immediately by jumping on it, but was outmaneuvered as the cat turned to the side, out of reach of his hands. As Obito fell to the ground, the cat ran toward a tree in that direction. At that moment, someone was up there. The cat only realized it when a net fell over it. Unable to dodge, the feline was soon trapped while trying to free itself quickly, but without success. "We got it!" Obito celebrated immediately. Rin looked tired inside. Kakashi appeared beside the trapped cat, scratching the back of his head a little. Minato glanced from afar and disappeared, reappearing beside them. "Grab the carrier and put him inside it," Minato said, while Rin picked up the small pet carrier. Obito approached the net where the cat was trapped. "Easy, easy," he said while petting the cat. "Everything's going to be fine." He carefully took the cat out of the net and placed it inside the carrier. The cat suddenly became calm, but Kakashi noticed the malicious look in the feline's eyes. "Obito, watch out," he said. But it was already too late. The cat simply scratched Obito's hand, leaving him stunned while the cat jumped, ready to run away. A light appeared right in front of it and grabbed it by the back of the neck. The cat felt trapped again, unable to escape the man's grip, who looked at it before turning back to his students. "You have to be careful with that," he said, placing the cat carefully inside the carrier. "Sensei, you saved us," Obito said, grateful. "I won't always be here." "You have to be more careful not to fail and have to do everything all over again," Minato replied while closing the carrier. Obito grabbed the carrier and rubbed his face against its side. He certainly liked cats. "All right, let's go," Minato said. The four of them went to the residence. It was already almost the end of the morning, which is why Minato intervened. His students were having difficulty catching the cat, and he couldn't allow the animal to escape again. "Oh my god! My ronk," the woman shouted as she finally saw the cat back. "I just need you to sign here that the mission is complete, ma'am," Minato said. She nodded, happy. Of course. "Here it is," she said. Perhaps for the first time she paid attention to Minato. "Don't I know you from somewhere?" she asked suspiciously. "Well, I'm always walking around the village," Minato replied casually. "Well, that must be it. I always recognize a handsome young man when I see one," she said, giving a wink. Minato nodded carefully while hearing giggles coming from behind him. "Well, we'll be going then. Goodbye," he said politely before turning to his students. At least Obito and Rin were laughing with their hands over their mouths as the door closed. Kakashi was almost forming a smile behind his mask. "These brats. I didn't know Sensei had skills with older women." Obito began to laugh loudly before receiving a flick on the forehead from Minato. He immediately fell silent. "Let's go home. I have 2 wives there waiting for us to have lunch," Minato said, emphasizing the word wives for those children. Minato didn't even make them walk there. He simply teleported everyone, reappearing at the Namikaze property. "Welcome," Suna said while already setting the table. The 2 babies were with them in a corner of the kitchen. The family dynamic was that both Makoto and Suna would stay with the family's 2 children during the first months. After that, they would work part-time, but they would never leave the children alone for long. Suna could work from home. She could train Yamato at the family training field and conduct medical research for the village directly from home, since there was a laboratory for them in the basement. Kushina also worked in the morning and would return every afternoon. She would always stay during the afternoon to assist the 2 mothers, something she never complained about, also taking care of the children as if they were her own. In any case, Minato sat at the table along with the others. Kushina arrived shortly after, greeting everyone and sitting in one of the chairs while they had lunch. "Is Hanabi going to stay out with the team all day?" Makoto asked, since she was the only one who had not been there earlier. "She should be with her team. She went somewhere in the land of fire together with the 3 students," Minato said. "What? She already went out like that?" Suna seemed surprised and returned to the children, eating in silence while simply listening to the family dynamic. "Tell me, have you already done any mission today?"
Suna asked curiously, looking at the three children.
We caught a cat, Rin answered shyly.
A cat? Makoto raised her eyebrows before starting to laugh. She turned back to the children.
When we formed our team with Minato, Sensei Jiraiya also forced us to chase cats and even pull weeds from several houses.
That lasted for quite some time, Makoto commented, reminiscing. Really?
You did that too, Kakashi seemed quite surprised. He was wearing his mask while eating, but no one seemed to find that disturbing. The food simply disappeared in front of his mask. Minato remained particularly curious about that ever since he started bringing him to lunch.
It must be a trick.
He kept that thought to himself, saying nothing more about it. Meanwhile, Obito and Rin listened to the stories about the first missions with Jiraiya, which were practically the same thing. Nothing interesting was happening with the legendary team either, at the beginning of their careers.
Sensei, are we going to have to keep pulling weeds? Obito complained immediately. Was that you who said that, Obito? Do you happen to think that this isn't a respectable job? Minato asked in a serious tone. What? He looked a little embarrassed. It's not that he thought it was an unworthy job, but pulling weeds, was that really a job for a ninja? Of course not.
Obito, you have to understand that we are ninjas of Konoha. Any mission we have to do, whatever its rank may be, whether it's catching cats or cleaning land, is worthy of any ninja, he replied. Kakashi looked with a distant gaze.
How could a ninja who could even kill Kage say such a thing? If any other jonin had said that, they would be ridiculed in any meeting among shinobi. In any case, they continued talking. Minato took all three of them to train at the training field.
Yamato had also arrived, as he did every afternoon, and Suna was with him, helping him train with release. Minato made 2 clones and left them with Obito and Rin to give private lessons, while they began training, jutsu execution, kunai throwing, and chakra control.
Sensei, Obito looked suspicious.
He always came with a clone, but Minato himself went over to him this time.
There's something I want to talk to you about, Kakashi.
I spoke with your father this morning, Minato began.
I know you go out with your sword on missions, but you never use it. I imagine it's outside of your main combat style, correct? Kakashi nodded.
Well, I wanted to know if you would reconsider returning to training Kenjutsu as a main form of combat. I think it suits you quite well.
If you manage to fuse it with lightning chakra, you can do it easily, starting through the Chidori.
Minato quickly summoned a sword from his bracelet with storage seals and immediately transformed it into a sword wrapped in lightning. He turned to the side and began cutting the nearby tree slowly.
The sword didn't even seem to exert force to create a shallow cut in the tree. Kakashi looked at that in surprise and couldn't help but feel a little impressed.
Minato was using Chidori itself to manifest lightning on the sword.
But that's not all. Minato pointed to a corner where no one was training.
Suna, can you create a fairly thick tree here? He asked.
Suna looked at Minato, thinking for a moment before nodding.
She made a hand seal, and a huge tree grew in the middle of the area.
Pay attention, Minato said to Kakashi.
The sword stopped releasing lightning. He simply turned it back and immediately made a cut formed purely of chakra, slicing the air in front of him, before an aerial slash advanced through the air. In the next moment, the slash advanced at high speed, cutting the tree diagonally. It began to fall slowly, sliding to the side before making a loud crash on the ground. Even Obito, Rin, and Yamato's training was interrupted by the noise. There are many sword techniques here. Your father masters both long-range and short-range techniques. I would like to train you in that, if you are willing to start practicing again. There are great chances for you to become powerful with it.
Minato looked at the fallen tree before continuing.
Kakashi, I have already seen your father cutting a biju from a perfect Jinchuriki and making it retreat with its tail between its legs, afraid of what he is capable of doing. Kakashi listened to all of that in silence, his eyes fixed on the cut tree.
Tell me, Sensei, who is stronger, you or my father? I mean, in terms of Kenjutsu, he asked curiously. That? Minato thought for a moment. That is difficult to answer. We haven't had a great conflict to decide that.
He has more techniques with the sword, but I have a few tricks that surpass him, Minato said. He wasn't exactly a specialist in kenjutsu, but there was something that set him apart. If he used haki, he would certainly become more powerful than Tsukumo, to the point of cutting mountains. However, that was still a level he had not yet reached. He had great potential to become a swordsman as powerful as Dracul Mihawk or Roronoa Zaro from the world of One Piece. That was his next great leap in power. If he managed to master sword techniques at that level, he would become extremely powerful and gain another upgrade to deal with the threats of the future.
Anyway, your father also gave me other techniques. Minato showed the scroll. There are 12 techniques in here that your father asked me to try to master and then pass on to you. He also sees talent in you. Minato paused briefly before continuing. But it all depends on whether you want to or not.
I'm not going to force you to do this if it isn't your style.
Minato spoke sincerely.
There was nothing to argue about. There were many ways for a ninja to become strong, but each one had their own way of fighting. Some styles even seemed ridiculous, yet they were still unique to each person. I want to learn, sensei.
Kakashi gave his answer, and Minato looked satisfied.
Well, great.
Then take this sword and let's see what level you're at.
I have several things I learned from your father, but I also have my own unique way.
Minato said, drawing another sword.
He was about to try to change that boy, turning him into something far more powerful than the future copy ninja. After that, both of them began to train. The next day, another mission was taken by Minato in the mission room. For Obito's misfortune, he looked at the terrain full of weeds.
Well, your job is to clean the entire land, Minato gave the order.
The three children looked at the terrain. They had no choice but to move forward and start removing the weeds.
Obito was the first.
But when he tried to pull one of them out, he felt enormous difficulty. To the point of lifting his own body into the air while trying to yank it out, but the weed seemed unable to detach from the ground.
What is this?
This isn't a weed, Obito complained.
What's wrong, Obito?
Unable to pull out a piece of weed, Kakashi mocked while pulling another one out.
Obito glared at him.
I want to see you pull this out, Kakashi Baka.
Kakashi tried to pull one as well, and had exactly the same reaction. He pulled. Nothing. He tried again. Nothing.
They had to remove 83 plants from that land. Sensei, what are these things made of? Rin couldn't even properly ask, because when she turned to the sensei, he was no longer there. Obito, Kakashi, and Rin had no choice but to return to work, trying to pull those weeds with great difficulty. Until they finally managed to pull one out after practically burying their own feet into the ground just to get enough strength to yank it out. They still had hundreds of them to remove. This was madness.
Do you really have to do this? Suna's voice appeared beside Minato while she watched the three children from afar. Well, they might complain that working is too easy, right? Minato shrugged. Suna had her arms crossed.
Earlier, Minato had asked her to go to the land and simply strengthen all the weeds, creating enormous roots beneath the ground and also reinforcing the entire plant, to the point that even the leaves seemed as hard as steel, impossible to pull out easily.
Do you plan to give them all kinds of things?
Will there be more missions with cats? She asked curiously.
Yes. I'm sure Makoto can lend me some of those, the cats she can summon, Minato said.
It was true that Makoto had also made a summoning contract with a clan of cats, somewhat similar to the dog clan that Kakashi had. They were not that powerful, but they were quite useful for tracking. Having one of those cats run away from his students seemed quite amusing, replacing the ordinary cats from the missions. And it would also be quite useful for silencing any complaints from shinobi about doing easy missions.
Chapter 380, The Enemy's Movement Begins. Third-person POV. Konoha, 43.
The cat they were chasing at that moment had been Team 7's greatest challenge during the past week, as it was extremely fast and intelligent. Even with Obito, Rin, and Kakashi working together, they could barely get close to that feline, and they had been at it the entire day. Minato watched from atop one of the houses, far away from his team, observing the cat that moved as fast as a genin. What the children didn't know was that he was there, holding the real mission cat in his arms, unlike the cat they were chasing. Minato was gently petting the little animal, which purred happily at the friendly touch of the blonde ninja. He was basically deceiving his students, who didn't know that the cat they were chasing wasn't the original, but rather a cat from the Cat Clan using the transformation technique to look like the mission's cat, the one they were trying to capture in the capital of the Land of Fire. That mission was different from the others of the past week, because that cat belonged to the wife of the current daimyo. Minato had no intention of leaving the village in the first week, but since they had been doing many cat rescue missions, Tsukumo thought it wouldn't be bad for Minato to go do one in the capital of the Land of Fire. Seeing no results with the usual tricks, the children began to opt for something heavier than the traps they had been trying to set, so they started executing plans with stronger jutsu than the simple ones. Obito created a shadow clone, Kakashi began making adjustments to his earth style, while Rin used water to scare the cat, which ran to the opposite side, hating water. It ended up falling into an area where a hole was beginning to form with Kakashi's jutsu, but it was smart enough to jump into the air before being placed inside the hole. However, a kunai advanced toward it. The cat used its claw to deflect it, and while it spun in the air without force, the kunai simply turned into a cloud of smoke and, before the cat could react, Obito appeared and grabbed it, holding its arms tightly. A trick Minato had taught Obito, imitating how Naruto fought when he didn't have much strength at the beginning. Before falling beside the hole that had been created, the cat merely sighed, seeming bored, while Obito began jumping with joy. "I got it! I got it!" said the clone, to the point of tossing the cat into the air. That immediately made Rin worried, while Kakashi became irritated. "Stop doing that, you idiot! He's going to escape." "That's true," Obito's clone murmured awkwardly. Then the original Obito appeared, grabbed the cat, and punched his own clone. "You fool! Did you want to let him escape again?" the original snarled at the clone. "Arg! I was just celebrating," the clone said apologetically, before disappearing. "Now then, shoo, shoo, shoo," Obito began petting the cat, which didn't seem very important. Unlike the cat in Minato's arms, Minato found that satisfying. He simply made the cat in Obito's arms switch places with the cat he had in his own hands through the Hiraishin seals that were on the felines, while the cat with Obito suddenly became affectionate. None of the children noticed the exchange of cats, not even Kakashi at first. "Look, he likes my touch now," Obito shouted, thinking it was cute. On top of the roof, the cat in Minato's arms was set down on the ground. It gave a shake and transformed into a red-furred cat. "Can I go back now?" the cat asked in a bored tone. "Of course. I appreciate you helping me with this," Minato said. Sure, the cat replied, still not looking the least bit enthusiastic. "Anyway, tell Makoto-sama to bring treats. I'll be expecting that as payment." With that, it exploded into smoke and disappeared completely, returning to the Cat Clan, with which Minato had a contract. This wasn't the first time a member of the Uchiha clan had contact with that clan. In fact, it was normal throughout history for the Uchihas to have ties with the Cat Clan. In any case, Minato turned toward the three students and teleported to them with a silent flash. None of them noticed the cat swap yet, although Kakashi did notice that the cat seemed a little different, but he didn't comment on it. After all, the cat they had struggled to catch today had humiliated them, while looking bored at everything they tried to do. It was almost as if they were facing a Jonin ninja playing around and even lowering his own abilities so that the three of them could handle the task. The cat, now in Obito's hands, while he squeezed it in a hug, seemed much lazier and happier, purring the entire time. "It seems you managed it. Let's return it to the castle," Minato said. All three of them moved toward the large Japanese castle of the daimyo. As they entered the place, they were quickly approached by a ninja. In fact, there were several Konoha ninjas there providing security for the family that controlled the feudal region of the Land of Fire and also financed Konoha. "You finally caught him, Lord Minato," the Jonin said with a smile. Minato nodded. "Where is my little darling?" a voice echoed through the place. A woman appeared at the entrance. "Ah, you caught him,"
she said excitedly, approaching with the guards.
Obito barely had time to react before the woman took the cat from his hands. She squeezed it against her face, pressing it tightly. The cat looked a little desperate at that moment, while the children finally understood why it had run away. The woman simply squeezed the cat like it was a teddy bear, and the cat was entering despair. "Thank you very much for bringing my little sweetheart back.
Anyway, come along. I'm sure my husband will want to speak with you."
She addressed Minato, who nodded as they all entered the castle. "Minato," said the daimyo himself, in a room while they were being served with small Japanese cups filled with very expensive sake. Meanwhile, the children were in a room behind Minato, sitting and unable to hear the conversation between their sensei and the man who controlled the entire financial system of the Land of Fire. "Hey," Obito whispered. "I wonder how much that bottle is worth," he murmured, remembering very well that the daimyo himself had taken an expensive bottle from a safe. "I don't know, it can't be cheap," Rin murmured. "That's worth at least about 2 years of work for a jonin," Kakashi replied, making the three of them freeze. "What? So, man, then it would take about 100 years for a genin to buy a drink like that." "That's very likely," Kakashi said. Kakashi knew the value of that bottle. It was one of the most expensive sakes in the world. "He's drinking it just like that with sensei," Rin murmured. "You can tell they're friends." "Did you see how he treated him as soon as he showed up at the castle? They really do seem like friends," Obito said, whispering. "I heard the daimyo was a child when Minato saved him along with his father at the beginning of the Second War," Kakashi replied, while the two seemed to understand. Already inside the room, the conversation became more serious. "So you mentioned the Land of Iron earlier," the daimyo's voice suddenly became serious, replacing his smile with a worried look.
"Yes. The time has come. We must see how the nations will react," Minato said quietly. "I see," he murmured.
While they began talking, Minato was careful not to let any information slip to either the guards or his team about what they were discussing there. "Well, in any case, I'll leave that with you, Minato," the daimyo said.
"Yes," Minato replied as he stood up.
He said goodbye with a handshake from the daimyo and began leaving the room, meeting the children in the other room waiting for him after his private conversation.
"Let's go," Minato said. They left the castle. "So are we going back to Konoha the same way we came here?" Obito asked, since they had arrived by teleporting. Minato didn't want to waste time traveling to the capital. "Not this time. I want us to follow the traditional route back.
Besides, I want to meet someone who just arrived in the city," Minato said.
The three, despite being curious, followed him without asking questions.
Minato passed through the streets of the capital. There were merchants, locals, foreign traders, and even mercenaries looking for work.
The place was even busier than Konoha.
Even so, he kept ignoring everything until he found a tea shop. He entered the place, pushing aside the curtain. The children simply followed him while watching Minato walk to one of the tables, where a woman was drinking tea with 3 red-haired girls.
It was Hanabi Namikaze, Minato's Hyuga wife.
"Minato," she said with a smile when she saw him approach, while the 3 children stood up.
All 3 of Hanabi's students were the same age as Minato's students. They bowed to Minato.
It was customary among the Uzumaki to behave this way when seeing Minato Namikaze, recognizing him as their savior when the clan had been on the brink of destruction.
"Hello everyone," Minato said as he sat beside Hanabi.
"Join us," Minato said to his children, who sat beside the Uzumaki girls, while they greeted each other today with slight nods of their heads. "I was surprised when I sensed your chakra here in the capital."
"We were returning to Konoha," Hanabi said as she sipped her tea. Minato ordered tea for himself, along with his students. "Sakumo gave me this mission today.
It would be good for my students to see the capital, and I also needed to speak with the daimyo about that matter," Minato said, while Hanabi nodded slowly.
That matter. She knew very well what he was talking about. "And how did it go?" Minato asked with a serious look. "I managed to get a little more this time. They're moving.
They're surveying the area," but the new Mizukage and the fourth Reikage will be moving on the eastern side.
Jiraiya-sensei is handling the western countries, Hanabi replied. The new Mizukage, Minato pondered over that.
Hanabi now had an enhanced eye, able to see from afar what was happening even in another country. It wasn't difficult for her to enter the border and directly check on the Kage thanks to the Byakugan.
Well, it seems we'll have to act soon, Minato said.
The children looked curious. All three Uzumaki were carrying out reconnaissance missions at the border with their sensei, always making reports. After Hanabi looked for a while in each direction, they would see Hanabi's eyes always shining, but they didn't know exactly what she was seeing. But upon hearing about the Mizukage and the third Reikage, they couldn't help but be surprised.
Hanabi never gave that many details. Minato drank his tea while thinking about what Hanabi had said.
Certainly, Kiri was in Madara's hands at this moment. Who would he place as Mizukage?
Minato still couldn't imagine.
But there was certainly some plan behind it. However, Madara was no longer someone who would remain hidden underground after everything that had been happening in the ninja world. With the power that Konoha now displayed, the balance of the world leaned to one side, and that threatened Madara's plans. Minato, of course, had been dealing with the White Zetsu.
Some of them appeared in Konoha from time to time.
At least they appeared frequently when he had returned to Konoha and killed them one by one. Until they stopped coming, since they couldn't obtain any information about him or his family. Even Hanabi had become an expert at killing them, since her eye could now detect them.
In the same way, Kushina could detect a Zetsu's emotions, and even Tsunade could sense their wood element as a form of life. Minato later taught Makoto's eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to detect them as well.
Minato made sure his wives could deal with this too. He would not feel safe with those creatures, which could enter most places in the world without being detected. At least his family would be safe now, with his women able to protect the children from any assassination or kidnapping attempt by those Zetsu.
Did you see anything in the land of waterfalls? Minato asked.
Everything I saw before disappeared, she said carefully.
Minato nodded slowly.
Madara had left the hideout, which meant he was truly going to act and come from the land of water.
Well, I think it's better for us to return to Konoha.
We need to prepare, Minato said quietly, only for her.
Mikoto nodded.
No more reconnaissance missions for her, and no more cat capturing missions for Minato and his team. They would now go to the Land of Iron to spy on the Kage meeting.
Chapter 381 Next Evolution. Third-person POV. Konoha, 43.
They had returned to Konoha after leaving the capital of the Land of Fire, using the last hours of the day to train a bit at the Namikaze property, even together with Hanabi's team. Minato took his team to eat ramen at the usual restaurant, with Tucci happily serving them.
Kushina heard the idea and ended up joining Minato's team as well, while Tsuna, Makoto, and Hanabi stayed at home. It was a pleasant night after an intense week.
Kushina spent much of the time talking with the children, asking questions about their first week of classes as ninjas, while she began to laugh louder and louder whenever Obito or Rin were explaining the situations they had gone through. Without them knowing, she exchanged complicit glances with her husband, already aware of the level of difficulty the children had gone through. She knew he was using it to train the students, even using Mokutan on Tsuna's land and Makoto's contract with the Cat Clan to make his students go through several hardships. Even Kakashi would become embarrassed when Kushina asked how they couldn't catch simple cats, with a mischievous smile from someone who knew exactly what was happening. They certainly couldn't say they were happy with the situation, but it served as training.
Kakashi and Rin expressed that they should not underestimate small weeds or runaway felines. Sensei, when are we going to do a real mission? I'm tired of hunting cats.
Obito said at some point, being the only one who showed dissatisfaction with the missions.
We'll see what we'll have tomorrow. We'll visit the mission hall. Minato replied.
We did that last time, but the mission you picked was pulling weeds and then another mission about some runaway feline, Obito murmured with dissatisfaction, but Minato didn't care, continuing to eat and talk with Kushina.
Everyone went home and, the next morning, they would meet near the Hokage building. Even Obito hadn't been late.
Minato greeted everyone and took them inside the place, where Tsukumo and several Jonin were already beginning to work on separating missions for the teams.
Minato, I see you brought Team 7, Tsukumo greeted them calmly.
Yes, we came to pick up a new mission, Minato said.
Please, Sensei, don't let it be a cat mission, don't let it be a mission to pull weeds, and don't let it be a mission to clean clogged gutters. Obito cried.
Minato had also made them do a mission to clean some gutters for elderly people who couldn't maintain their own houses and hired the village instead, especially Genin. For someone who likes taking care of old folks, you're being quite stingy.
Is cleaning a gutter really that bad, Obito? Minato mocked. I would do that for free, Professor.
Not as a mission, he replied. As I already mentioned, that is also part of a ninja's job, Minato said.
Minato then turned his attention to Tsukumo. Please, give us a mission. A real one this time.
This made Obito, Rin, and Kakashi look at him immediately.
It's time to put my team in the field, Minato added, making Obito look at him in exaggerated shock. Both Kakashi and Rin looked surprised as well.
I see, alright, let me see, Tsukumo said with a smile as he checked the papers. Quickly, the three gathered together and began whispering.
Is he really going to pick a mission? Obito asked quietly.
He said it's time to put us in the field. It seems like we're finally going on a real mission, Rin murmured.
I think you don't remember, but remember when I was talking with Miss Hanabi at that restaurant in the capital? It seemed like something quite important was happening. Kakashi commented.
Minato simply watched the three in silence, while Tsukumo chose a mission and picked it from among the scrolls.
Here. I need you to deal with a small gang in the Land of Bears, he tossed the scroll to Minato. It was a rank B mission. Land of Bears, very well, Minato said. A rank B mission. Obito shouted in joy. Kakashi didn't seem that impressed, as he was already used to doing missions up to rank B. Even so, he was secretly satisfied with the opportunity to carry out a mission at this level with the new team. When they left the building, Minato addressed the three. We're going to travel west, and we'll be away for more than a week. I want you to have 1 day to prepare.
Train, you can also use my land or training field 7 to practice.
Tomorrow we will meet at exactly 6 in the morning at the village's west gate, understood?
He spoke while the three children nodded.
In the next moment, Minato disappeared, leaving them behind. He found Hanabi using their training area, while the three Uzumaki girls were practicing.
Hanabi corrected their adamantine control while they worked on chakra flow, with the Hyuga keeping her Tensigen active to help them correctly distribute chakra throughout the body.
Kushina was also there, mainly helping the girls with their own adamantine chains.
She displayed several of them coming out from her back, grabbing entire trees and ripping them from the ground with ease.
The abilities of the Uzumaki were extremely broken. Minato couldn't understand why no one had so much prominence with them in the original work.
He only remembered 3 occasions. When Kushina used them to create a barrier against the Ninetales when it attacked the village, and inside Naruto when he was fighting to dominate Kurama, the 3rd time was when Karen used them against Yamato, who was being controlled by that strange ally of Obito made entirely of Madara's Mokuton. Karen managed to do what a large part of the shinobi alliance of the 5 nations couldn't do, but she did it in an instant, using the chains. Minato had already witnessed many Uzumaki massacring enemies from several nations with these chains during the battle in Yuzushiogakure, so he found it a bit strange that this ability had been so limited in the original story. Minato wanted his children with Kushina to have these chains, and they would turn them into monsters. The girls had already noticed his presence, but Minato's gaze was fixed only on Hanabi.
She immediately noticed and left the students training with Kushina before approaching him. We will depart tomorrow. We'll have a mission in the Land of Bears to the right of the Land of Iron, where our final objective is.
I intend to do it so the children can gain some experience.
After that, we'll head to the Land of Iron, Minato said. I understand.
Then I will also prepare the girls.
Are you sure they will stay safe? Hanabi asked. I don't see any danger if we take precautions. We won't approach with them.
They will be left with clones dozens of kilometers away, and I will also place Hiration on each of them and on your students as well. If it becomes dangerous, we'll pull everyone out of there.
But our mission isn't to enter into conflict, it's only to observe, Minato said. Hanabi nodded carefully. But what you said about Madara, that still leaves me uneasy, Hanabi murmured.
She remembered very well when Minato first began revealing what he knew, talking about the existence of Madara in the land of waterfalls. Hanabi could spy on him better than Minato could, since she could observe him without being noticed with her eyes, from a safe distance. Minato knew that Hanabi had only managed to find him because he had told her exactly what she should look for and where to look, at least in the vicinity. After all, for Minato it was easy to point to Kanabi Bridge, where Obito had been crushed in the original timeline. Black Zetsu and Madara had no idea they were being observed the entire time.
In any case, Minato and Hanabi had to deal with the upcoming Kaige meeting.
Minato raised his arms and stretched a little.
I think I'll train a bit.
I'm pretty rusty, since it's been a week that I've been focusing only on my students, Minato said. He still had many abilities to develop.
He had not yet reached his peak. Minato turned and saw Kushina saying something to the girls before leaving and approaching him.
Can I go with you? She said seriously.
If it was to train, he wouldn't limit his abilities.
He and Hanabi had already overdone it the last time in an attempt to demonstrate a bit of power and let loose, to the point of causing chaos in the land of fire with just an exchange of blows. It was obvious that Minato was going to another continent, where he could truly let loose.
All right, Minato said. Kushina should have been working in the village's ceiling sector that morning, but she was off duty.
I'll stay here with the girls, Hanabi said. If any of my students come to train in the field, let them practice.
If they ask about you, just say you went to train alone.
With those words, Minato disappeared together with Kushina. They reappeared in a region full of mountains and forests, but completely damaged. They had destroyed much of the ecosystem of that place during their training. Bijou bombs and all kinds of potential attacks had already been launched in that area.
Not even animals approached anymore.
There were even artificial lakes stretching from the beach to the forest, formed by the explosions.
Do you want a sparring match? Kushina asked. Minato shook his head. Not this time, Kushina.
I want to test some techniques that Tsukumo gave me, but I also want to train some of my own abilities.
I need to do this alone. Kushina nodded.
All right, good luck. She wished him well. Minato moved away from the beach area and advanced toward a mountain. He could hear the explosion of Kurama's chakra being released as her full form appeared in the distance, but Minato ignored it.
Kushina had her own training, and Minato needed to prepare his. He began analyzing each technique using chakra.
He especially liked the long-range attacks capable of launching aerial slashes.
There were some interesting techniques that even resembled well-known moves from the world of Bleach.
After reading and analyzing them several times, Minato began to practice. First, he launched a technique that transformed chakra into sakura flowers, immediately releasing several slashes throughout the area. He directed the attack against a cluster of trees in front of him, and more than 30 trees began to be cut with small slashes from all sides, while a windstorm filled with sakura petals, created by the chakra itself, did its work. It was a kenjutsu technique combined with wind element chakra. The other technique was none other than the technique that Danzo himself possessed. By placing wind element chakra on the blade, he did this with a kunai and a somewhat yellowish layer formed over the sword/kunai. It was the same concept as the lightning blade, but using wind element chakra.
So this is where you got that technique from, Danzo? You stole it from the Hatake clan? Minato mocked.
Even though Danzo was already dead at Minato's own hands, his crimes seemed to have no end. Another technique consisted of hiding one attack within another. While Minato launched an aerial slash, a second slash came hidden in the shadow of the first. It was similar to Hiruzen's Shadow Shuriken style, but applied to Kenjutsu. He also learned to launch an X-shaped slash that cut through everything in its path. Some trees were completely destroyed, while others simply collapsed. Minato learned all the techniques that Tsukumo had given him and was satisfied with the result. If he showed that to Tsukumo, he would certainly be impressed to know that Minato had learned everything in just one afternoon. But Minato still wasn't finished. He focused on his own swordsmanship style, trying to create attacks inspired by the styles of Zoro and Mihawk. Even Whitebeard, Roger, and Rox possessed swordsmanship with haki capable of challenging physics itself and cutting mountains with ease. Minato knew that this was the path he should follow now, together with the development of his own haki. He continued delivering slashes against a nearby mountain, creating strikes with dozens of meters of reach, but he was still very far from truly cutting it the way Madara's Susanoo could. While also placing his fist coated with armament haki against a tree, he tried to recreate the internal damage of advanced haki without moving his fist. After all, according to Hyogoro of Ueno, you didn't even need to move your fist to actually produce the effect of the punch itself, allowing you to project your aura to cause internal damage without touching the enemy. Release your restraints. These were the words echoing in Minato's mind. He was determined to evolve even further. Even though he had already reached the top of the world at that moment, he would still become stronger. His black fist met the tree, and he concentrated. Clearing his ears from the sounds of the forest or the noises Kushina made just by moving Kurama's giant avatar in the other area. Then he tried to expand a wave inside the tree. He didn't move his fist. However, the tree simply exploded on the other side. As if he had used Rasengan, but at the same time, different, because it didn't have the vortex effect, it was more chaotic. Minato pulled his fist back and clenched it near his face with a smile. "This is the path," he said, satisfied. Chapter 382, The Scars of a War. Third-person POV. Konoha, 43. She met her students at the West Gate, as they had arranged, each of them wearing a backpack. Even Kakashi, which surprised Minato, because it was believed that, since the boy belonged to a great clan, he should use storage scrolls. Even more so with a father like Tsukumo, this knowledge should be practical among the great clans. But thinking about it, even on that mission in classic Naruto, in the Land of Waves, Kakashi also used a backpack, which means he never used storage scrolls very frequently. That was when Minato thought he would have to teach him to be more practical. Even though storage scrolls were not cheap and were very difficult to create, requiring a master in Fuinjutsu, using them had moderate difficulty and they could learn. After all, a backpack, even with a body strengthened with chakra, was still subject to being an unnecessary extra weight when you could use scrolls. Minato had a style of storing his weapons directly in his bracers, in the style that Sasuke used, while keeping supplies, such as food and water, along with resources like tents and sleeping bags directly in scrolls in his pocket. "Well, it's good that you arrived. Are you prepared?" Minato asked, while the three nodded. "I want the three of you to follow me and maintain the position we trained when we leave the Land of Fire capital," Minato said and immediately jumped to the first tree, with the three children following, ignoring the flow of merchants entering and leaving at the village gate and the guards watching them leave. Thus, they followed as arranged, advancing over the trees. In front went Minato, obviously, Obito and Kakashi on each of the flanks of the formation, while Rin stayed in the middle, taking care of the rear. Even though nothing passed Minato's radar, his function was still to train them in the correct formation, keeping them aware of each of their roles, as if the lives of their companions and the success of the mission depended on it. On the way, throughout the day, Minato had secretly created clones and attacked each side while the children were caught by surprise, stopping so Minato could give some lecture, since he didn't want any of them to get soft, even if they felt safe being his students. The only one who came out better was Kakashi, but even so Minato spoke about many of the flaws Kakashi should work on, even though he was a chunin. Anyway, they crossed the Land of Fire from Konoha to the border for 2 days, camping, always keeping watch and taking turns among themselves during the night, and moving on during the rest of the day, until they finally reached the border. The marks of the war had never left that place. Minato couldn't help but stop to breathe in that air a little, an air that brought sadness and euphoria to him. There, he saw companions being killed. He saw himself become frustrated while the enemy surprised them. He also saw himself argue with people he called friends and even with his future wives at that time. But he also saw passions arise and made friends and comrades. He saw people look at him like a hero, like someone who had saved them on some occasions or even avenged them. He saw people wanting to be like him, having admiration for what he had been achieving on the battlefield since the beginning. Thus, they were passing near where the medical camp used to be, in the center of the border. So this is where the second war happened, sensei? You worked here? Rin asked cautiously, seeing Minato standing on his own while he remained there observing the scenery. I worked further north, near the border between the land of fire, the land of grass, and the land of rain, Minato said. It was here that you changed the course of the war, right? I read this week in one of the history books that you became a hero after you obtained the antidote that changed the war, Obito said with admiration. But Minato just shook his head. War is not only the glory that you see. I saw my companions die in front of me. I saw them having their dreams destroyed, losing limbs that made them unable to continue being ninjas. I saw the despair of people watching their relatives and friends die and losing themselves because of it. I saw hatred often being the fuel to attack enemies in the next mission. I saw ninjas lose themselves in that same hatred, even betraying one another, even among the ninjas of Konoha. Minato recited each example, making even Kakashi, along with the others, shrink. War is not only glory to make you famous and powerful. If you are not prepared to survive, it will consume you. I know some of you wanted to be in this war, Minato said, looking mainly at Kakashi. With his few years of life, he had the desire to prove his worth, seeing his father being praised by the village for his performance in the war. It's no wonder he tried to graduate at only 5 years old and succeeded, influenced by that. At that time, he had already met Minato saying that he would surpass him. But don't worry. Minato returned with a more determined expression toward the three. I promise that I will do everything so you never have to go through this. Most ninjas of Konoha have to try to survive, and sometimes they reach dilemmas. There will come a moment when they ask themselves if they shouldn't abandon the mission, if they should betray their companions, or if they should sacrifice themselves for them and for the sake of the mission. But I want you to do what is right. Never abandon your companions. I told you once, Kakashi, that a long time ago I disobeyed Konoha to save one of the women I love and am married to today. If I hadn't intervened, she would be dead and I would have mourned her death for the rest of my life. Minato said, remembering that conversation very well when Kakashi's father had been marked for the village's ostracism by the elders. Kakashi also had some shame regarding Tsukumo. Minato had talked about what he had done. He simply infected himself with the poison Tsuna had taken, to become someone disposable to the village, and that gave him an opening to avoid becoming a traitor when invading Tsuna in search of the antidote. After all, he would be a lost cause with poison in his body. I will do everything so that none of you have to go through what war pressures you to do. You have my word. Minato said with determination. The children seemed to reflect for a moment. Minato observed the scenery a little longer, destroyed ground, uprooted trees, scattered kunai that had not been collected, some medical items also spread across the place. Hidden further ahead, they would also find bodies that had been left behind. This camp had belonged to Tsunade, but she had not been in a good state at the end of the war with Dan's death. She had not done a complete sweep of the terrain where the camp had been. After all, she had been more interested in drowning her sorrows than demanding accountability from the ninjas who served her at that time. Anyway, let's go. I want to see one more place near here. Minato said seriously, and the children nodded as he moved forward, crossing the more open terrain before entering the border forest. He went to a corner where there was a stone wall further south. Minato stopped in front of it together with his students. The wall's extension was quite large. Here are all the names of ninjas who died, honored for their bravery and service to Konoha. As long as you were not declared a traitor, your name is written here. Minato said while observing some of the names, some that he had known. I don't want to die, Minato. I'm scared. I don't want to die. Minato could still hear the young voice of a boy, not much older than his students at that time. Someone who liked to say that Minato was his idol and that he wanted to be like him. He died in front of Minato in a surprise attack coming from IWA, while Minato was working with the Phantom Squad in the south against Suna, also dealing with surprise attacks coming from Suna at the same moment that IWA attacked. That same night, he launched an attack on IWA, massacring every ninja he could to avenge the boy who died in front of him and other members of Konoha. He understood very well what it meant to act with hatred that night. Did all of them die, sensei? The children couldn't help but frown, while Obito stuttered as he looked at the gigantic list. There were thousands of names. How could someone not be disturbed by that? Yes. Some of them were even your age, he revealed. I didn't bring you here to make you scared, but to teach that war is not a game, Minato said in a serious tone. They remained silent for a few minutes, until Minato turned his attention back to the three. Now, let's go. We've already seen everything we needed here. They didn't speak as they moved across the open area and finally headed toward the last layers of the border. And, as expected, several bodies that had been left behind for not being identified were scattered there. In the middle of this, some ANBU ninjas from Konoha appeared in front of them. It was the team that guarded the borders. Lord Minato. They immediately recognized him, while Minato took a scroll and threw it to the ANBU who was leading the group of 6. The rest should be around the area, since ANBU squads worked with 12 members. We are advancing into the land of rain, he said while the ANBU opened the scroll and carried out the identification process to authorize Minato and his team to pass the border limit. Everything is in order. You have authorization to enter. I only ask that you and your students respect the infiltration process, the ANBU said. Minato nodded. He knew all the approach standards and the other procedures. Minato used to do the same type of work with the team that Danzo had placed for him to lead. He always watched the borders, while secretly preparing to deal with Danzo himself, who tried to find ways to get rid of Minato. He watched him all the time with a full route ANBU team prepared to kill him back then. In the end, Minato had killed all of them in Suna. He followed to what should have been the advanced post of one of the camps that stood on the dividing line between the border and the Land of Rain. The place had clearly been looted by Ain's ninjas, obviously. Whatever could be dismantled or anything that had remained had already been taken, so there was nothing to do there. Well, remember, remove your headbands. We are acting as infiltrated ninjas. We cannot cause a diplomatic problem if we appear with Konoha's headband. Minato explained, and the three nodded, removing them while storing them inside their backpacks. Now we are entering a territory where any patrol may see us as enemies. That's why we must stay alert. Until now you have only encountered my clones, who could have been enemies with murderous intentions. Now we have the possibility of encountering real enemies, so I ask that you know what you are doing. Minato said, while everyone already nodded without using their headbands. Even Minato's uniform had changed so he wouldn't look like he was from Konoha, he wore a black infiltration outfit. Let's go. With that, they went deeper in. As they advanced, the rays of sunlight became increasingly rare, until they entered in almost total darkness, a direct characteristic of AIM. Soon it began to rain heavily. Although there was no lightning in the sky, the rain was persistent and thick, making movement and visibility difficult. Keep going. Minato demanded loudly. He used observation haki to monitor the entire region. He found several patrols from Amagakure, but he never allowed them to find him. Even so, Minato doubted that Hanzo would really try to interfere with them, even if he found them. Clearly, he should know about the meeting of the Kages and would not interfere with the escort of a Kage. Here and there would be some patrol, but they probably only wanted to identify who had entered their country and keep an eye on them. Minato only imagined the Kazekage passing through the Land of Rain, though it was very likely that he should be going by the other side of the continent as well. In any case, the patrol activity was far more intense than normal, and Minato quickly began tracing routes, always moving, sometimes even retreating when he saw some force advancing toward the region where he was passing. The children obeyed all his orders while he tried to teach them about infiltration, in the same way Jiraiya had taught him one day, even getting close to patrols while making them observe how the ninjas of the Land of Rain patrolled, showing periods and patterns. You will face all types of ninjas, and they do not act under a single pattern, but each village works with its own type. I want you to always pay attention when you have the opportunity to check the patterns of how each country acts. Just like Suna, Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri. Each acts in its own way and has its own strategies. Minato said to them at one point. They observed the ninjas of AIM, who hid inside the water with pipes to breathe, remaining there vigilant while searching for any outsider entering their country. Minato couldn't help but wonder where Nagato and the others were at that moment. He searched the region with his haki, but he found nothing of them in the area, even though he could reach dozens of kilometers. Maybe they weren't even in this country or were very far away. Despite that, he had also asked Hanabi to help search for them in the last month, since she might be able to find them with her eyes. He wanted to check and see if it was the moment to go and remove Nagato and the others from there. He couldn't leave them there. The only problem was Black Zetsu and Madara, and Minato would have to see how to deal with him. But this meeting should determine the path he should follow. Anyway, they advanced for 2 days through the land of rain. They found a cave to camp in. Minato didn't even need to leave ninjas at the entrance. He could feel, kilometers away with his haki, the movement of Amagakura's ninjas. Even White Zetsu would be detected by Minato. He himself had already encountered some, which he avoided so as not to alert Madara that he was advancing to the west, at least not yet. Well, that's enough military rations. Since we brought plenty of food, I'll prepare something decent. Minato then said to the children, who expected to eat the same rations they had been eating over the past few days. "S-sensei, you're going to cook?" Obito asked, surprised. "Ah, you still haven't eaten my cooking?" "Well, they say I cook very well, so let me do it today." Minato spoke calmly, while beginning to take out his tools. He set up a small portable stove that he kept with him, using fire chakra as fuel, and began to cook with his pots. They had hunted a moose along the way and placed it inside one of the storage scrolls. So he made a meat stew with plenty of seasoning. "This is so good!" Obito couldn't help but shout when he tasted Minato's food for the first time. He was already praising the smell while Minato was cooking. Rin looked like she wanted to scream while moaning in pleasure as she tasted the food, while Kakashi couldn't help but feel satisfied, even though he didn't want to show that expression. "Eat as much as you like," Minato said in the end. "Just don't overdo it. We still have to continue for one more day before finishing the border," Minato finally said, while taking his own plate as well to join them. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze is now on hold, since we're caught up with the author. Along with that, the series What If Fishing System in Food Wars World will be going on hold soon, since we're nearly caught up with the author there as well. So now, I need your help picking the next 2 projects for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if Transmigrated and taking over Ichigo's body? What if martial artist Reborn is Kenichi Shirahama? Please vote in the poll and let me know which stories you'd like to see next. I'll take the top 2 picks and start working on those series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.